Chapter 1351. The Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace. It was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and red flowers were everywhere. Among the clouds, the Heavenly Palace of Extreme Passion was completely wrapped in red silk. Everyone who entered and exited the Heavenly Palace of Extreme Passion wore red robes, and joyous music was played from time to time. It was as if the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace had a joyous occasion, as if someone was getting married. Otherwise, a dignified orthodoxy would not hang red silk all over the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace. Moreover, judging by the festive atmosphere in the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace, the person getting married must be an extremely important person. Otherwise, the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace would not make such a big fuss. However, if one were to observe carefully, one would notice that every disciple who came out of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace had a stiff and forced smile on their faces. A strange emotion was also growing in these people. Sigh. In the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace, Luo Ho and Yuan Ling sat cross-legged in the clouds. There was a table in front of them, and they occasionally clinked their cups, as if they were drinking and having fun. However, Yuan Ling frowned, and there was no trace of joy on his face. He kept refilling his cup, as if he wanted to get himself drunk. Although Luo Ho did not drink by himself, he kept playing with the wine cup in his hand. He looked at the disciples of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace, who were holding the red silk to decorate the wedding venue, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Brother Yuan Ling, congratulations. The Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master should call you Master from now on. Luo Ho said half-jokingly. You're still in the mood to joke. Who is this Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master? She's one of the most powerful beings in history. Isn't it ridiculous that she wants to marry Yi Xian? Yuan Ling had been upset for a while. When he heard Luo Ho teasing him, he had nowhere to vent his frustration, so he vented it on Luo Ho. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. Yi Xian is in danger now. If the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master really marries him, he'll have a backer. Those powerful beings will have to think twice if they want to harm him. Luo Ho paused for a moment, then smiled and said, Look at the way this Heaven Master treats you and me. He showed us all kinds of secret techniques, and even gave us all kinds of pills and holy fruits, so that you, a supreme saint, could become a saint king. Isn't this all because of extreme love, Heaven Master? What do you know? Yi Xian has so many secrets. These powerful beings see him as delicious meat. Delicious. If the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master wants to harm him, wouldn't it be a disaster? Yuan Ling. To the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master. I don't think so. The Heavenly Lord of Extreme Love is the strongest since the ancient times. How noble is her status. Even if she really has some sort of motive for Yi Xian, she wouldn't want to marry him. This? Yuan Ling was stunned. Luo Ho's words made sense. If the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master wanted to harm Yi Xian, with her cultivation, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to resist. The Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master didn't need to marry Yi Xian. Now you and I can only wait. Wait for your precious disciple to come here. As for how he'll deal with this, neither of us can help him. He must have made his own decision. Come. The divine wine of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace is extraordinary. You and I can improve our cultivation faster if we drink more. Luo Ho raised his cup and drank it all. He let out a sigh of relief. You bastard. This wine was exchanged for my disciple's happiness. Yuan Ling said bitterly. He drank all the wine in the cup. He didn't know whether he was happy or sad. He let out a long sigh. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't figure out why the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master wanted to marry Yi Xian, and made such a big fuss. At this moment, the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace was arranging the wedding banquet. A large number of powerful figures from the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace were sending wedding invitations to all the sections. Almost all the sects of the supreme orthodoxies and famous orthodoxies in the chaotic world were sent wedding invitations by the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace. It wouldn't take long for this matter to cause an earthquake in the chaotic world. The marriage of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master and the marriage of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Master. This was simply a fantasy story, and even more so a huge joke. Who was the extreme emotion heavenly master? He was at the top of the universe. He was invincible. He was the ruler of an era. He was a supreme expert who was respected by all creatures in the chaotic world. However, such a powerful person was going to marry someone like an ordinary mortal. This was simply a big joke. No one dared to believe it. If the extreme emotion heavenly master was going to marry another supreme expert, it would still make sense. After all, they were both supreme experts. It was reasonable for them to become dual cultivation partners. However, the extreme emotion heavenly master was going to marry Yi Xian, a little cultivator in the Yang birth realm. This was simply unheard of. Since the birth of the chaotic world, there had never been anything more ridiculous than this. Although it was ridiculous, it did happen. At this moment, a large number of experts from the extreme emotion heavenly palace were roaming the chaotic world. Every wedding invitation was sent to all the orthodoxies. Obviously, they wanted to make this marriage a reality. No one was allowed to object, not even Yi Xian. Although the extreme emotion heavenly master was a woman, her temperament was extremely domineering. She didn't hesitate to do things. She didn't give Yi Xian a chance to object at all. Thinking about it, the extreme emotion heavenly master was able to become a supreme expert. How could she be an indecisive and weak woman? Whoosh! A meteor streaked across the sky and instantly appeared outside the extreme emotion heavenly palace. Who else could it be other than Yi Xian? When Yi Xian saw the heavenly gate in front of him filled with red silk, and heard joyous music coming from the direction of the extreme emotion heavenly palace, he frowned slightly. He didn't know who was going to make such a big fuss about their wedding. However, Yi Xian didn't think too much about it. He came to the extreme emotion heavenly palace this time to meet the extreme emotion heavenly master. He also planned to make a deal with her. It would be a way to settle the matter between him and the extreme emotion heavenly master. Buzz! Yi Xian stepped out and directly entered the heavenly gate. He then strode towards the extreme emotion heavenly palace. However, before he could take more than a few steps, a trembling voice suddenly entered his ears. He's here. Yi Tianfu is back. Quickly report to the heavenly master. The two guards trembled and shouted. They immediately threw out a jade talisman. It turned into a stream of light and shot towards the extreme emotion heavenly palace. However, it wasn't over yet. A large number of heavenly generals came from all directions. Every one of them was wearing a red robe. They were playing various musical instruments in their hands. Occasionally, some of them would look at Yi Xian strangely. Yi Tianfu? Yi Xian was confused. He was clearly called Yi Xian. Since when was his name changed? Also, what was up with these people? Why were they playing joyous music in front of him? Moreover, even if the extreme emotion heavenly master sent a decree to inform the people of the extreme emotion heavenly palace that he was coming, she couldn't have given him the wrong name. Tianfu. It was an extremely unfamiliar name. It was so unfamiliar that Yi Xian didn't even think about the meaning behind it. Next, Yi Xian encountered an experience that he would never forget for the rest of his life. P.S. This book needs to be sped up. Please subscribe to the original version. Brothers who have been reading pirated versions, can you read it on QQ and reward me with a subscription? Fatso thanks. Chapter 1352. Dang dang dang. The sound of 81 gongs rang out and spread throughout the entire extreme heavenly palace at an extremely fast speed. A large number of figures were rushing towards Yi Xian from all directions. Welcome back, heavenly man. Everyone's attention was on a middle-aged beauty who was dressed in a silk robe. She was followed by a large number of people from the extreme emotion heavenly palace. Each of them was emitting an extremely powerful aura. Yi Xian glanced over, and his mind was fiercely shaken. This middle-aged woman's aura was extremely powerful, and there was no lack of people with terrifying auras following behind her. If Yi Xian guessed correctly, these people should be the experts of the extreme emotion heavenly palace. The weakest among them was at the third realm of Dao querying. The person leading them should be the current palace master of the extreme emotion palace. Palace master of the extreme emotion palace, Ling Bai greets heavenly man. The palace master of the Extreme Emotion Palace walked over. Although she was an expert of the immortal realm, she was very humble at this moment. She even bowed to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned on the spot, as he watched an immortal stage expert bow to him. An extremely bad premonition arose in his heart. Heavenly Man? This name entered his sight once again. Even if Yi Xian was caught off guard, he could faintly feel that something was wrong. The two words Heavenly Man probably contained an unimaginable meaning. Palace Master, what do you mean? Yi Xian frowned and probed. Unfortunately, Ling Bai didn't answer Yi Xian's question. Instead, she bowed to Yi Xian again and said, Heavenly Master has been waiting for you in the palace for a long time. I will bring you to see her now. As Ling Bai spoke, she led the way for Yi Xian. The mighty crowd made way for them. However, all kinds of joyous music were still playing. There were no signs of it stopping. Disciple, Yi Xian. Suddenly, two voices were heard. Luo Ho and Yuan Ling were rushing over. However, before the two of them could get close to Yi Xian, they were blocked by the people of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace. They couldn't get close to Yi Xian at all. Yi Xian's brows furrowed even deeper. Because Yuan Ling and Luo Ho were constantly giving him looks, their faces were filled with anxiety. This caused Yi Xian's heart to thump as he inwardly cursed. Yi Xian wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was extremely smart. After experiencing the initial confusion and astonishment, he gradually regained his senses and faintly sensed that something was amiss. It can't be. Yi Xian's face was instantly shocked. He had already thought of an answer. His body and mind trembled. Although Yi Xian had faintly guessed an unbelievable result, under Ling Bai's guidance, he was heading towards the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Technique. He couldn't leave even if he wanted to. These people seemed to be welcoming his return, but they were also keeping an eye on him. Look, the world around him had been sealed off, and even Rahu and Yuan Ling's transmissions had been cut off by someone. Tian Fu, the Heavenly Master has been waiting for you for a long time. Please. Rumble. The doors of the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace rumbled open. Ling Bai bowed to Yi Xian and led everyone away. She didn't give Yi Xian any chance to ask any questions. The arrow was already on the bow. At this moment, although Yi Xian had already guessed some terrible things, he had to face what he had to face. He couldn't avoid it even if he wanted to. Yi Xian let out a breath and strode into the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace. When the stone doors rumbled shut, Yi Xian disappeared from the outside world. Red candles, red curtains and red carpet spread across the ground. On both sides of the carpet were dragons and phoenixes. Although the decorations looked simple, they did not lose their elegance. It gave people a sense of celebration. Yi Xian was walking slowly. At this moment, he was completely certain of his guess. This caused his expression to become slightly heavy. He knew what was about to happen. At the end of the red carpet, there was a white jade bed. A beautiful woman was sitting at the head of the bed. She wore a phoenix crown. Although she didn't wear any makeup, her beauty alone was enough to make the world fall for her. Extreme Emotion Master. This person was the Extreme Emotion Master. At this moment, she was very beautiful. Her phoenix crown and robe made her look even more alluring. Although she had the beauty of a woman, her aura was also very strong. The combination of the two made people feel like they could only see her from afar. Mister, you are finally back. At this moment, the Extreme Emotion Master let go of her strong aura. She was like a woman waiting for her husband's return. Her gentleness was all focused on Yi Xian. She didn't look strong at all. Mister, I have been waiting for you for 3 yuan hui. I have prepared this phoenix crown and robe for a very, very long time. Today I can finally put it on for you. I will marry you as your wife. The Extreme Emotion Master said softly. She slowly walked toward Yi Xian. Her eyes were like autumn water. They were filled with Yi Xian's shadow. You? Yi Xian frowned. Before the Extreme Emotion Master could reach him, he took 3 steps back. He was clearly shocked by the Extreme Emotion Master's courage to love and hate. You don't want to marry me? The Extreme Emotion Master was a very sensitive person. When she saw Yi Xian's attitude, her gentle expression changed. What was to come had to come, and what was to be faced had to be faced. Yi Xian wasn't an indecisive person. He knew that if he didn't make things clear, he wouldn't just hurt himself. He'd hurt the extreme emotion master too. Yes, I don't want to marry you, Yi Xian said in a low voice. I hope we can talk. Boom. When Yi Xian's words entered her ears, the extreme emotion master's heart shook. She couldn't help but release a strong aura. It almost affected Yi Xian. Why? The extreme emotion master controlled herself. She bit her lips and looked at Yi Xian. Marrying Yi Xian was her biggest wish. The man she loved was right in front of her. But he didn't want to marry her. I already have a wife. She passed away a long time ago. But I've never thought about getting married again. Yi Xian didn't mince his words. How dare you? The extreme emotion master loved Yi Xian very much. But she was the strongest of all time. She was extremely arrogant. She humbled herself to express her feelings to Yi Xian. She wouldn't let Yi Xian reject her. Her identity as the strongest of all time aside, the extreme emotion master was a woman who dared to love and hate. She was a very strong woman. If you don't marry me, I'll kill you first. Then I'll kill myself. The extreme emotion master entered the Tao with extreme emotions. She placed all her feelings on Yi Xian. She wasn't just saying that. She really could do something so ridiculous. She wasn't just trying to scare Yi Xian. Life and death are reincarnations, Yi Xian said coldly. Chaos is heaven and earth. I, Yi Xian, am afraid of death, but no one in this world can force me. Not even the strongest are an exception. Yi Qingmei was a very strong woman. She was the strongest of all time. But Yi Xian was also a very strong person. In the face of all the pressure from the strongest of all time, he was already very depressed. Now that Yi Qingmei was forcing him to marry her, he was very unhappy. Chapter 1353. Although Yi Xian knew that the extreme love master meant him no harm, Yi Xian was a very rebellious person. If she threatened him with the power of the strongest, Yi Xian wouldn't agree, even if he had to fight to the death. You? Boom. The extreme love master was furious. She raised her slender hand, but her body was trembling. Her hand fell down powerlessly. She seemed to be dispirited. I knew you didn't want to marry me. Even if I used all my might to force you, I'm sure you'd rather have your soul destroyed than agree to marry me. Extreme love god whispered bitterly. I'm sorry. Whether it's the current me or the future me, I don't care about relationships. I hope you can understand. Yi Xian sighed. Fine. Since you don't want to marry me, I'll lock you up in the extreme love heavenly palace forever. Even if I have to look at you every day until the chaos reincarnation begins, and this chaotic universe is destroyed, you and I will go to hell together. Extreme love master bit her lips. Yi Qingmei wasn't just saying that. She had already planned for the worst. Even if she and Yi Xian were to die here, she wouldn't let Yi Xian leave. If I can't have it, then no one else can. What was extreme love? Extreme love seemed to be very emotional, but it was also a very extreme nature. This was the key to the extreme love master's Tao. Why do you have to do this? Yi Xian was shocked. He never thought that the Lord of Extreme Emotions would be so extreme. He actually wanted to act so crazily. I know you've been to the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace and the Sky-Devouring Demonic Palace, but I have to tell you that even if the other strongest come to save you, I'd rather explode on the spot than let you go. Ruthless. Crazy. Only the word ruthless and crazy could express how Yi Xian felt about the extreme love master. Yi Qingmei was really a ruthless and crazy woman. Yi Xian had wanted to summon the two most powerful beings to take him away from the extreme love sky palace. But the extreme love master was too cruel and crazy. He had completely cut off his escape route. If an ancient paragon chose to self-detonate without any regard for his life, even the other paragons would be unable to do anything. This was because the self-detonation of an ancient paragon would be extremely terrifying. It was very likely that it would turn into a great battle that would destroy everything. Putting aside the fact that the Lord of all Spirits and the Sky-Devouring Demon Master had made a deal with Yi Xian and agreed to help Yi Xian fend off the threats of the other ultimate existences, they were more concerned about their own lives and would definitely not fight to the death with the extreme love master. Yi Qingmei's move was not only vicious to herself, But she was also a completely crazy woman. No one in history would risk their life to fight a crazy woman. Sir, don't blame me for forcing you. That was what you taught me back then. Furthermore, you were the one who gave me my name back then. At this moment, Yi Qingmei had completely let go. She once again looked at Yi Xian tenderly. However, the extreme love power had already sealed off the entire Sky Palace. No matter how capable Yi Xian was, he would not be able to take a single step out. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood what it meant to suffer the consequences of one's own actions. Future self, you've given me a huge problem. Yi Xian was extremely bitter and helpless. He didn't know if he should hate his future self, or if he should hate himself even more. Because no matter if it was him or his future self, they were both him. As the saying went, you learn from the person you follow. Back then, the future self had taught Yi Xian for 100,000 years. It could be said that he had completely inherited Yi Xian's personality. Ruthless, vicious, and crazy enough. He had completely inherited these three traits from Yi Xian. This also made Yi Xian taste what it meant to suffer the consequences of one's own actions. To marry or not to marry? At this moment, an extremely difficult problem was placed in front of Yi Xian. He did not know how to choose. If he married Yi Qingmei, then he would be the so-called heavenly husband. It could be said that the entire Sky Palace of Extreme Love would have to listen to his orders. Furthermore, the other experts would also have to be wary of him. It could be said that he would be able to reach the heavens in one step. If he did not marry her, with Yi Qingmei's personality, she would definitely do as she said. She would not let him leave even if she had to burn both jade and common stone. He would probably be trapped here with her for the rest of his life, until the chaos was destroyed. In reality, Yi Xian understood very well that the benefits of marrying Yi Qingmei were great. However, Yi Xian was a very strong-willed person and a man. He did not want to rely on a woman to rise up, and he did not want to rely on a woman to protect him. This was very difficult for Yi Xian to accept. However, now that the problem was placed in front of him, there was no way for him to escape. He could only choose one path. Sir, do you know that Yi Qingmei has already sent our wedding invitations to all the orthodoxies? In 3,000 years we will be married. No matter how strong the sects are, they will all come to congratulate us. If we do not get married in 3,000 years, then I, Yi Qingmei, will become the biggest joke in history, the extreme love master said bitterly in a low voice. Whether it was coercion or deep love, Yi Qingmei had sent out wedding invitations. She had used her dignity as the strongest of all time to bet on a future. Even if she lost, she would have no regrets. This was her way of doing things. As the strongest of all time, if Yi Xian refused to marry her, Yi Qingmei would become a joke among the strongest. Even the strongest of all time would become a laughingstock. Yi Qingmei had forced herself into a dead end. It could be said that she was cutting off all means of retreat. This extreme method of doing things stunned even Yi Xian. Yi Qingmei was indeed forcing him, but wasn't she also forcing herself? Deep thought. Speechlessness. Yi Xian was completely silent. No one knew what he was thinking. Sir, I know that your best friend is called Lu Bai. He is currently cultivating in the Heaven Mending sect. I have already sent someone to send the wedding invitation. He will be our wedding witness. There are other strongest of all time as well. In 3,000 years, they will come one by one. No matter what their intentions are, I will not allow them to touch you. Even if the extreme love heavenly palace no longer exists, I, Yi Qingmei, will let the world know that you are my husband. Yi Qingmei's voice was powerful and resonant. She had tender feelings for Yi Xian, but she also had the spirit of a strongest of all time. She looked at Yi Xian, who was silent. She bit her lips and said in a low voice, Sir, I was the one who bowed just now. If you really don't want to marry me, I will not force you. I will let you leave. 3,000 years. I will give you 3,000 years to think about it. When the time comes, I will wait for you at the wedding. If you are willing to marry me, I will wait for you there. If you are not willing to marry me, then you can leave quietly. Yi Qingmei whispered in a lonely voice. She quietly disappeared from the extreme love heavenly palace. Only Yi Xian was left alone. 3,000 years. Yi Xian had to make a choice in 3,000 years. No matter what he chose, Yi Qingmei would respect his decision. What a crazy woman. After dozens of breaths, Yi Xian let out a long sigh and murmured bleakly. In the end, Yi Qingmei spoke very casually and gave him 3,000 years to think about it. No matter what choice Yi Xian made, she would let Yi Xian leave. However, Yi Xian knew that Yi Qingmei would do something crazy for him. Perhaps 3,000 years later, it would not be a wedding banquet, but an unimaginable calamity for all living things, because Yi Qingmei was too similar to him. Chapter 1354. The chaos shook as if the heavens were falling, and the earth was sinking. An extremely unfamiliar name was also known by all in the chaos. Yi Xian. This was an unfamiliar name, and a person that no one knew. However, because the extreme love master was marrying this person, Yi Xian's name spread at an unimaginable speed. Since the birth of the chaotic universe until the 10th Yuan Hui, there were only two female supreme beings. One was the master of human Tao, and the other was the extreme love master. Women were weak to begin with. To be able to become a supreme being of all ages was to be respected by all in the chaos. Now that the extreme love master was marrying someone else, the entire chaotic world was going to explode. Moreover, the extreme love master was marrying a small cultivator. This was simply unimaginable and incomprehensible. There were those who were surprised, those who were jealous, those who felt that it was a fantasy, and those who could not believe it made up the majority. However, when the wedding invitations from the Extreme Love Heavenly Palace were sent to all the great orthodoxies, and even the supreme sects, this news was finally confirmed. For a moment, the chaos shook, and everyone's attention was focused on this wedding. Even the battle of the Great Path that had just begun was suppressed by this news. The Space-Time Temple. The Space-Time Master held the wedding invitation, and was extremely shocked. He fell into deep thought. His brows were tightly knitted, and worry flashed across his eyes. Nonsense, this is simply nonsense. Is the Extreme Love Master crazy? The Space-Time Master whispered angrily. The space-time power around him became chaotic. The space-time master knew very well what kind of person Yi Xian was. Not to mention his future. Just the secrets that he contained were enough for the other supreme beings of all ages to see him as a piece of juicy meat. Now that the extreme love master was marrying him as his wife, this seemed extremely absurd. However, what would the other supreme beings think? Without a doubt, everyone would think that the extreme love master was controlling Yi Xian. How could the other supreme beings allow this? What supreme being's wedding? What eternal feast? These were all bullshit. Even before the two of them got married, this so-called supreme being's wedding would turn into a slaughterhouse. The supreme beings would even fight among themselves. This extreme love master is too reckless. This is simply nonsense. The space-time master was extremely helpless. However, things had already developed to this point. The extreme love master had made this matter known to the entire city. Even if the space-time master wanted to stop it, it was too late. Another disaster. The space-time master let out a long sigh, and the wedding invitation in his hand turned to ash. No matter what, he had to personally come to the scene. He could only hope that this disaster would disappear without a trace. Undying Heaven Palace. Interesting, very interesting. I was just thinking of looking for Yi Xian. I didn't expect extreme love to act so quickly. Let's see how you'll protect him after 3,000 years, said Qing Han. He had to get Yi Xian. The extreme love master had sent someone to deliver the wedding invitation. In the Undying Heaven Master's eyes, this was a provocation. The extreme love master was declaring her control over Yi Xian. Boom! The wedding invitation in his hand turned into ashes. A sinister light flashed through the eyes of the Undying Heaven Lord. He sat cross-legged and didn't say anything. The moment he awoke from his cultivation, it would be time for him to head to the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Hall. A mere 3,000 years was an extremely long time in the eyes of mortals. However, in the eyes of the utmost powerful beings, it was merely the blink of an eye. Naturally, the Undying Heaven Lord could afford to wait. 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Wedding. The Lord of all Spirits whispered. The light of myriad spirits rippled. The corners of his mouth curved into a smile. No one knew what he was thinking. This Yi Xian is truly a nemesis of the utmost powerful. It seems that I have to take action this time. Since the Lord of all spirits had promised Yi Xian, he would fulfill his promise. However, this was also a challenge for him. He also wanted to see who was stronger and who was weaker in the face of these utmost powerful beings. He had attained the Tao in the current era and controlled the 10th Eon. With the laws of primal chaos around him, the Lord of all spirits didn't fear any great enemy. He was born in an invincible position. Naturally, he had to be present at this wedding. Heaven-devouring devil palace. This tribulation transcender technique is indeed powerful. It's very compatible with my heaven-devouring demonic art. However, this Yi Xian is truly troublesome. It seems that I have to go personally. The heaven-devouring devil lord was slowly breathing. With the tribulation transcender technique, his cultivation had increased once again. The hidden dangers of the heaven-devouring demonic art had been eliminated. At this moment, he could be said to be extremely ambitious. He believed that sooner or later, he would become the #1 utmost powerful being. He might even surpass the strongest throughout history and become a taboo character. At the same time, in the Primal Chaos Temple, the Destiny Temple, and the Human Tao Temple, these utmost powerful beings read the contents of the wedding invitation one after another. Everyone's mood was different, but without exception, all of them would attend the wedding of the utmost powerful beings 3,000 years later. It wasn't just these utmost powerful beings. For example, the Heaven-Mending sect and other great sects were discussing this matter at this moment. They were also preparing for the wedding of the utmost powerful beings 3,000 years later. No matter what secrets there were, these great sects had to prepare generous gifts for the wedding of the utmost powerful beings. Otherwise, if the gifts were too light, they would lose the face of these great sections. Heaven-Mending sect. The heavenly gate was vast and resplendent. Rumble. The tightly closed heavenly gate opened with a rumble. A peerless figure in white walked out. The Heaven-Mending sect's sect master had been waiting outside for a long time with a wedding invitation in his hand. What's the matter? At this moment, Lu Bai was calm, neither happy nor sad. He was as unfathomable as a celestial being. One couldn't see any cultivation aura around him, giving off an extremely mysterious feeling. You're your cultivation level? The Heaven-Mending sect's sect master asked in astonishment. Even with his immortal realm cultivation level, he couldn't tell what level Lu Bai's cultivation level was at. Moreover, when he looked at Lu Bai, he actually felt his soul trembling slightly. Tao seeking. It was short, powerful, and extremely plain. However, these two simple words caused the Heaven-Mending sect's sect master to suck in a breath of cold air. He took 3 steps back in succession and was completely stunned on the spot. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even if you have a chaotic spiritual body, you actually crossed the yin-yang realm and the half-step Tao-seeking realm in such a short time. How could you directly enter the Tao-seeking realm? The Heaven-Mending sect's sect master said in astonishment. He simply couldn't believe that Lu Bai was telling the truth. No matter how strong a chaotic spiritual body was, there was a limit to it. It required time to accumulate cultivation. However, Lu Bai's situation was simply unheard of. Not to mention Lu Bai, even the heaven-devouring demon master, could not compare to Lu Bai's speed of cultivation in the past. A celestial being, a celestial being! The Heaven-Mending sect's sect master roared excitedly after recovering from his shock. His eyes were shining with extreme excitement. Looking at Lu Bai before him, he felt as if he was looking at the most powerful expert of the next Yuan Hui. Why did you call me out of seclusion? Ever since the prodigy's banquet, Lu Bai's attitude towards the Heaven-Mending sect's sect master had become extremely cold. If it weren't for some old friendship, he wouldn't even talk to the Heaven-Mending sect's sect master. Chapter 1355. Yi Xian. Yi Xian is about to get married. Butian quickly woke up and told Lu Bai about this. At the mention of Yi Xian, Lu Bai's originally calm expression instantly changed. He waved his hand and pulled the invitation from Sect Master Butian's hands then quickly flipped through it. The Lord of Extreme Love wants to marry him, so he specially sent someone to deliver an invitation. Because you're Yi Xian's best brother, the Lord of Extreme Love hopes that you can be their witness. Sect Master Butian quickly said, Brother Yi is about to get married? And to the Empress of Extreme Love? Lu Bai closed the invitation and was stunned on the spot. He frowned slightly because he knew Yi Xian's personality very well. He was not someone who would live off a woman. Impossible. With Brother Ye's personality, he would not agree to this marriage. I'm afraid the Empress of Extreme Love is forcing him, Lu Bai calmly said. Bai, whether or not the Empress of Extreme Love forced him, he can become her husband. This is the same as having a backer. You should be happy for him. Even though Butian was also confused about why the Empress of Extreme Love wanted to marry Yi Xian, it was still much better than Yi Xian causing trouble everywhere. If Lu Bai was dragged into this, it would be even more unbearable. Happy? Lu Bai slowly shook his head. His entire aura became cold, and an indescribable light flashed across his body. I know what kind of person Brother Yi is. This wedding is definitely not what he wants. However, it doesn't matter. These ancient powerhouses are too arrogant. Even though I cannot compare to them right now, it doesn't mean I don't have a way to deal with them. Boom! All of a sudden, Lu Bai waved his hand, and a hole appeared in the sky with a loud bang. A black banner fell from the sky and landed firmly in his hand. Buzz! When the black banner entered his hand, the world suddenly shook. An extremely terrifying light of death erupted, causing the world to distort. The terrifying might it contained was simply shocking to the extreme. What kind of divine weapon is this? In just an instant, Sect Master Butian felt his hair stand on end. Even though he was in the immortal realm, he still felt his heart skip a beat when he saw this black banner. His body and mind trembled violently, as if this mysterious black banner contained an unimaginable terror. I call it the Origin Annihilation. It's a treasure that I obtained by chance, and it's also a gift for these ancient powerhouses, Lu Bai said calmly. Annihilation? Sect Master Butian asked in astonishment. It had to be known that Lu Bai had always been in seclusion, and had not even taken half a step out of the heavenly gate. Where had he obtained this mysterious weapon? Moreover, why do I feel fear and trepidation? As if this black banner called Origin Annihilation could annihilate my body and soul. Unfortunately, Lu Bai didn't answer Sect Master Butian's question. He only held the black banner in his hand, and an indifferent light flashed through his eyes. If the 10 ancient powerhouses or even Yi Xian were here, they would definitely be shocked to find that the black banner in Lu Bai's hand contained the same power as the shadow of eternity. It was an incomprehensible aura of death. However, no one knew how Lu Bai obtained this item except for himself. Perhaps this mystery would be solved in the future. What do you want to do? Don't act recklessly. Sect Master Butian instantly woke up because he saw Lu Bai's cold expression and the black banner in his hand. Clearly, he didn't come with good intentions. 3,000 years later, Sect Master Butian doesn't need to send anyone to congratulate him. I can go alone. Lu Bai held the banner and entered the heavenly gate again. The heavenly gate closed with a rumble, and his figure completely disappeared from Sect Master Butian's sight. Sigh! Sect Master Butian was stunned for a while. In the end, he could only let out a long sigh. In the past he could still see through Lu Bai, but now, he felt that Lu Bai was like a fog that was completely out of his control. Sect Master Butian knew that this wasn't a good thing. But what made him slightly happy was that Lu Bai's cultivation speed was simply too shocking. He probably wouldn't even need to wait until the next Yuan Hui to become a half-step supreme expert. Once the 11th Yuan Hui opened, he would instantly reach enlightenment in the next Yuan Hui. Let him be. As long as he becomes a supreme expert, my heaven-mending sect will also rise to the heavens. Nothing else matters. Sect Master Butian comforted himself. Time was like water, passing in the blink of an eye. 3,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Extreme emotion heavenly palace. Red clouds covered the sky as an ancient bell rang. Streaks of 9-colored clouds traversed the heavens and earth as a rain of flowers fell from the sky. Golden lotuses rose from the boundless earth, as tens of thousands of golden rays reached the heavens and the earth. It was a display of the supreme strength of the orthodoxies, causing people to feel extremely shocked when they looked at it from afar. The Extreme Love Palace was ranked towards the bottom of the 10 supreme orthodoxies. Their overall strength couldn't compare to the undying heaven of the heaven-devouring evil hall. However, a supreme orthodoxy was still a supreme orthodoxy. Its lineup couldn't be underestimated. Auspicious colors gathered at the top of the clouds. Countless figures sat in a circle in all directions. Above the boundless auspicious clouds in the center, there were bright red flowers and red carpets. There was even a row of peerless beauties serving as maids, giving off an extremely breathtaking feeling. At the end of the red carpet, the Extreme Love Master sat quietly on a phoenix throne in a phoenix coronet. Her head was covered with a red cloth, so no one could see her expression. There was a dragon throne next to her. It was clearly reserved for Yi Xian. At this moment all was silent. The entire wedding was silent. All the orthodoxies had gathered to congratulate him. Everyone's eyes were focused on the Lord of Extreme Love. Silence. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The wedding that was supposed to be lively and festive was so quiet that it made people nervous. This was because the Extreme Love Master sat alone. The other main character didn't appear next to her at all. Wait in silence. Whether it was the orthodoxies or the people of the Extreme Love Palace, everyone was waiting for Yi Xian's arrival. This was because the focus of the day was only on Yi Xian and the Extreme Love Master. Time was nothing to the cultivators present. However, only an hour had passed, but everyone felt as if they had gone through 30,000 years, or even 300,000 years. It was depressing, silent, and heavy. The occasion that was supposed to be festive was not lively at all. Instead, it felt extremely depressing. Of course, this depressing feeling was not created by themselves. It was brought to them by one person, and this person was the Extreme Love Master, who sat in the center of the wedding. Although she didn't reveal any of her strongest powers, an extremely depressing aura was emitted from her body. It affected everyone. "Sir, will you marry me?" Under the red cloth, the Extreme Love Master bit her lips. Her eyes were in a daze as she recalled every detail of the past. Even if she was the strongest of all time, she was still a woman in the end, a woman who was deeply in love. She didn't want to become the strongest of all time. She only wanted to become his woman. She had waited bitterly for 3 Yuan Hui. Chapter 1356. On the other side, in the heavenly palace of Extreme Love, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the air. His entire being was calm. There was only an oppressive aura around him. At that moment, the doors to the heavenly palace of Extreme Love were open. He could leave if he wanted to, but Yi Xian did not do that. He looked at the wedding scene. A complicated look flashed across his eyes. 3,000 years. 3,000 years. To Yi Xian, 3,000 years was not long. It was just the blink of an eye. However, Yi Xian was absolutely certain that these 3,000 years were a type of torture for him. It was a type of speechless torment, as if 3 months had passed. He still had not made a decision. He asked himself, should I marry the Master of Extreme Love? According to Yi Xian's thoughts, he did not want to marry the Master of Extreme Love, because he had no feelings for her. This was all because of his future self. But Yi Xian knew very well that he was his future self, and his future self was him. They were both himself. It was just that they were in different time and space. To be honest, Yi Xian was very touched. He was very touched. This was because Yi Qingmei had taken out her dignity to bet. If she won, she could marry Yi Xian as his wife. If she lost, her reputation would be ruined. She was the strongest of all time. She was someone who was respected by all in the chaos. She sent out invitations to all in the chaos, and announced that she was going to marry someone. If the person who was going to marry her ran away, even if she was the strongest of all time, she would become the biggest joke in the chaos. Don't think that the reputation of being the strongest throughout the ages wasn't important. It was truly too important, because they were invincible existences in the chaotic universe. And they had even been the rulers of a Yuan Hui. If they were reduced to a laughingstock, how would she face the chaotic universe? The stakes were too high. It was so high that Yi Qingmei would never be able to recover. Yi Xian knew this very well. That was why he hesitated. He did not want to hurt Yi Qingmei, but he also did not want to make things difficult for himself. At the center of the wedding, the golden sun had already risen, and the scorching sunlight shone down, but it could not disperse the hazy atmosphere in the venue, nor could it make anyone feel warm. This kind of silent suppression was too frightening. No one knew what would happen next, and no one dared to discuss why the person whom the extreme love master wanted to marry did not appear. At this moment, everyone experienced what it meant to pass a day like a year. This kind of oppressive atmosphere would really cause cracks to appear in their Tao hearts, but no one dared to take even half a step away. That was because this was the wedding of a supreme being. If anyone dared to overstep their boundaries in the slightest, they would definitely not have a good ending, even if it was not to say that they would commit murder on this joyous day. Chi. Suddenly, there was the sound of something tearing through the air. A white-robed figure suddenly appeared before the extreme love master, breaking the deathly silence. How dare you? Lu Bai's sudden appearance immediately caused the Almighty of the Extreme Love Heavenly Palace to shout. However, before the Almighty could do anything, the Extreme Love Heavenly Master stood up from her phoenix throne. Although she did not lift the red veil, her voice was heard. You must be Lu Bai? Lord Extreme Love asked calmly. Where is Brother Yi? Even in the face of a supreme being of all ages, Lu Bai was still calm and composed. He only spoke calmly, but his peerless demeanor was not inferior to a supreme being of all ages. Hiss! The sound of people inhaling cold breaths could be heard continuously. This was because Lu Bai's temperament was too extraordinary. He was fearless even in the face of a supreme being of all ages. No one would believe that such a person did not have a background. I don't know if he will come, but you are the witness of our wedding. Wait with me for his arrival. Perhaps because she loved the house, the Extreme Love Master did not blame Lu Bai, even if he did not show the slightest bit of humility. At this moment, her mind was filled with Yi Xian's figure. No one else could see the anxiety in her heart. All right. Lu Bai did not seem surprised. He stood sideways and closed his eyes to rest. His clothes fluttered slightly in the wind, attracting a lot of attention. It was not entirely accurate to say that Lu Bai's demeanor was only due to his chaotic spirit body. He always had an indescribable temperament, as if he was the brightest star in the chaotic starry sky. Time passed little by little. The golden sun in the sky slowly poured down, and the hot sunlight became more and more intense. However, Yi Xian did not appear for a long time. Extreme Love's wedding. I am a little surprised. Rumble. His body was like heaven and earth, and his voice was like a loud bell. A stalwart figure walked out from the starry sky. In just an instant, this person appeared in the center of the wedding banquet. Greetings to the undying Heaven Lord. When this person appeared in the center of the banquet, all the guests hurriedly stood up and bowed to the undying Heaven Lord. Their voices were like a tsunami. The supreme being of all ages was respected by all beings. This was the iron law of the chaos. Every supreme being of all ages controlled a Yuan Hui. Naturally, they would be worshipped wherever they went. Boom! Dark clouds covered the sky, rumbling and rolling. The mountains and rivers within 80,000 miles were extremely distorted. A terrifying crack opened in the sky, and the sky-devouring demon master was walking out. Greetings to the sky-devouring demon master. When the second supreme being of all ages arrived, it immediately caused a series of gasps. All the guests hurriedly greeted him respectfully. They did not dare to neglect him at all. Some of the weak-minded people's legs were trembling, and extreme fear flashed across their eyes. If the arrival of the undying Heaven Lord shocked everyone, then the arrival of the sky-devouring demon master terrified them. This was because the sky-devouring demon master's fierce reputation was too terrifying. During the 7th Yuan Hui, he almost turned the chaotic world into a land of death. The massacre he caused was simply appalling. Extreme Love, where is Yi Xian? The sky-devouring demon master ignored the others and looked at the Extreme Love Master indifferently. Unfortunately, The extreme love master did not answer. This made the sky-devouring demon master frown slightly, but he did not say anything. After all, he was not here today to make things difficult for Yi Xian. He was here to fulfill the deal he made with Yi Xian. Dong! 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 Heaven and earth trembled. Almost at the same time, 3 supreme beings appeared in the center of the venue. They were the master of human Tao, the master of destruction, and the master of all spirits. Before the guests could recover from their shock, the 3 figures strolled over from the horizon. They were the 3 supreme beings of all ages, who were known as the most powerful beings of the chaotic universe, by the master of all spirits. Chaos, destiny, spacetime. The arrival of the 3 supreme beings made everyone completely silent. Soon, the sound of worship was heard again, but an unimaginably heavy atmosphere filled the entire venue. The 9 supreme beings gathered together. This was simply something that had never happened before. How could this not make the guests tremble? Some of the smarter ones even faintly felt a sense of death. Chapter 1357. But for some reason the 10 strongest were all silent. The entire venue was eerily quiet, and the extreme love master, as the main character, was still sitting on the phoenix throne. Perhaps it was a tacit understanding, or perhaps it was the calm before the storm, but the 10 strongest did not make a sound. Naturally, the guests did not dare to make any noise. Who are you? Suddenly, the master of chaos's gaze fell on Lu Bai. His breath stopped for a moment, and his chaos dharma eyes flashed as if there was something on Lu Bai that he was interested in. Lu Bai. Lu Bai's white robe was otherworldly and untainted. Even though the 10 strongest of all time were beside him, and even though the master of chaos was asking him a question, Lu Bai was still calm and composed, as if the strongest of all time were just rotten wood. Are you willing to be my disciple? The master of chaos's eyes moved slightly, but when his words rang out, the other strongest were stunned and immediately focused their attention on Lu Bai. Even the extreme love master, who had been waiting for Yi Xian to appear, was shocked. The master of chaos was the first strongest to be born, and he knew many secrets about the chaotic universe. Now that he wanted to take Lu Bai as his disciple, it was definitely not as simple as it seemed. This person is strange, the master of fate said in shock, because he could not see the trajectory of Lu Bai's fate with his dharma eyes of fate. This shocked him to the core. The chaotic universe had 12 periods, and now it was the 10th period. The master of fate was known to control the fate of all living beings. Lu Bai was the second person whose fate he could not see clearly, and the first was naturally Yi Xian. How is this possible? How is this possible? How can there be 2 anomalies in the chaotic universe at the same time? They are completely out of the control of the laws of fate. Even though the master of fate was emotionless, he was still shocked. His dharma eyes of fate repeatedly checked Lu Bai, but he could not get any useful information. Are you willing to be my disciple? The master of chaos asked again with a slight frown. Lu Bai did not say anything other than his name, as if he was invisible. No. These 2 simple words came out of Lu Bai's mouth. His eyes were still and calm, but when he said these words, it immediately caused an uproar. Many guests even angrily rebuked him. How dare you? The master of primal chaos has taken you in as his disciple. This is a great opportunity for you. How dare you be so impudent? Kneel. How dare you? All kinds of angry voices could be heard, but Lu Bai chose to ignore them. It was as if they were nothing more than air in his eyes. Come here. Let this lord take a closer look at your secrets. Boom. The master of fate raised his 5 fingers and tried to grab Lu Bai. However, before he could even touch Lu Bai, a 9-colored ray of light shot towards the master of fate. Bang! The world shook, and the void exploded. A terrifying crack appeared, and the surrounding world instantly distorted. The 2 supreme forces showed signs of spreading in all directions. The mountains and rivers within hundreds of millions of miles would probably be turned into ashes. When the supreme forces attacked, they could destroy the world. This was not just a saying. If this kind of supreme force spread out, other than the supreme forces present, all living things would be turned into ashes. Suppress! The master of primal chaos attacked, and suppressed the crack in an instant, quietly dispelling this silent calamity. Extreme love, what is the meaning of this? The Master of Fate asked coldly. It was the Extreme Love Master who had stopped him. Otherwise, Lu Bai would have fallen into his hands. He is the witness of my marriage with Yi Xian. If you dare to touch him, you will have to go through me. The Extreme Love Master pulled down the red veil. His face was extremely cold, and his eyes were filled with killing intent and hostility. You? Looking at the Extreme Love Master's cold eyes. Even the Master of Fate, who was emotionless, was shocked. What kind of gaze was this? Killing intent, madness, and viciousness. It contained an extremely frightening feeling. It was as if the Extreme Love Master before him had turned into a crazy beast without intelligence. He could go on a rampage at any time without caring about his own life and death, and take him down with him. At this moment, the Master of Fate retreated. It was not that he was afraid of the Extreme Love Master, but he realized that there was something wrong with the Extreme Love Master today. He did not want to be the one to stand out. Supreme. That's all there is to it. In such a solemn atmosphere, Lu Bai was extremely calm. He even glanced at the Master of Fate indifferently and spoke with contempt. Lu Bai's words not only offended the Master of Fate, but also the other Supreme Force's expressions changed. This included them as well. What was going on now? Could the Supreme Forces be so disregarded and humiliated? One Yi Xian was enough. Now another one had appeared. Could it be that the dignity of the Supreme Forces of all time was so weak? The same question appeared in the hearts of these Supreme Forces. This immediately made their expressions turn ugly. However, with the Extreme Love Master protecting Lu Bai, these Supreme Forces could only bear with it for now. This was because these Supreme Forces of all time knew very well why they were here. Yi Xian had not appeared yet. There was no need to confront the Extreme Love Master because of Lu Bai. Silence. Silence. An eerie silence. The entire wedding venue fell silent once again. The silent atmosphere from before grew again. The Extreme Love Master returned to her phoenix throne. However, this time, her red veil had been removed, revealing her stunning beauty. Time passed little by little. The golden sun in the sky was setting in the west. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the heavenly palace of extreme love. The golden sun was about to set, and the night was about to envelop this world. Unfortunately, a full day had passed, and Yi Xian still did not appear. Even when the waning moon rose into the sky, and the bright moonlight shone on the ground, there was still no sign of Yi Xian. The supreme force of all time actually allowed the groom to run away on the day of the wedding. This is the biggest joke in the world. Finally, the undying Heaven Lord could not bear it any longer. He sneered and mocked, because he no longer had the patience to wait. Extreme love. The dignity of the supreme forces of all time cannot be insulted. Where is your groom? The Destruction Master asked coldly. Although the other supreme forces did not say anything, each of them had a different expression. Some were laughing, while others were embarrassed. Regardless of whether they had any grudges with the Extreme Love Master, the Extreme Love Master was also a supreme force of all time. At this moment, they had waited for a full day, but the groom still had not appeared. This was simply ridiculous. It was a disgrace to the title of Supreme Force of all time. Chapter 1358. It was fine if the strongest did not speak, but when the Lord of Deathless and the Lord of Destruction asked coldly, it immediately caused an uproar. The guests from all sides began to discuss unconsciously, and they looked at the Extreme Love Master with strange eyes. She ran away from the wedding? That's impossible. The Extreme Love Master sent out wedding invitations, and this news has spread all over the chaotic world. If she really ran away from the wedding, then where is the Extreme Love Master's face? I think she really ran away from the wedding. Otherwise, why hasn't the groom appeared after a day? That's right, he must have run away from the marriage. However, this Yi Xian really has guts. He actually dared to do such a muddle-headed bastard thing. This is simply ruining the reputation of the Extreme Love Master. Suddenly, a stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The guests from all sides whispered, and this spread was extremely fast. In an instant, it spread to the whole venue. and the whole wedding banquet hall began to become noisy. At this moment, the extreme love master sat on the phoenix chair. Even when faced with the contemptuous eyes of the guests from all sides and the strongest of all time, she did not speak or move, and there was no shame on her face. "Sir, do you really not want me anymore?" At this moment, the extreme love master's eyes were in a trance, and her heart was already sour to the extreme. Her star-like eyes were filled with mist, as if a drop of tears would flow out at any time. However, the extreme love master could not cry. She really could not cry, because she was the strongest of all time. Even if she was about to lose her reputation, she could not cry, because this was her last dignity. However, she loved people very much, but she would forget about love to the heavens. The extreme love master created the power of extreme love, and the person she loved was Yi Xian. Although she was the strongest of all time, and had once controlled a Yuan Hui, she was still a woman trapped by love. A drop of tear flowed out from her eye socket, down her cheek, and dripped to the ground. This teardrop was crystal clear, and contained the sorrow of the extreme love master. She really didn't want to cry, but she couldn't control herself because she was in so much pain that she couldn't breathe. She waited bitterly for 3 Yuan Hui, but the final result made her disheartened. What was left of her dignity was gone. "You?" At this moment, Lu Bai's expression suddenly changed. He originally regarded the extreme love master as an enemy, but when he saw the drop of tear, his heart trembled violently, and his breath instantly stagnated. She really loved Brother Yi? At this moment, Lu Bai whispered in his heart. He had already felt the extreme love master's love for Yi Xian. The sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. Everyone was shocked. The extreme love master was the focus of everyone's attention. When she shed a tear, all the guests saw it clearly. What a joke, what a joke. This is the biggest joke in the world. You, the Lord of Extreme Love, actually had someone run away from your wedding on the day of your wedding. You are simply laughable to the extreme. You are smearing the reputation of all of us supreme beings. The Lord of Destruction rebuked coldly. Extreme Love, your little lover has already escaped. Tell me where he is, and I will personally capture him. At that time, I will definitely avenge you. The undying Heaven Lord strode towards the extreme love master. He looked at the extreme love master with ridicule and contempt. Today, the extreme love master's reputation was ruined. The undying Heaven Lord completely looked down on the extreme love master. It was an insult to the title of extreme love. However, although the extreme love master had become a joke, Yi Xian must be obtained. This was also the undying Heaven Lord's purpose in coming here. At this moment, the extreme love master sat on the phoenix throne. Her eyes were withered and lifeless. She had lost the vitality that a human should have. She gave off a lifeless feeling. There was nothing sadder than a dead heart. At this moment, the extreme love master's heart was dead. Perhaps she could be called a walking corpse. She had completely lost the courage to live. When an ordinary person lost the courage to live, that person would be extremely dangerous. They would do some incomprehensible and crazy things. And when an extreme love master lost the courage to live, it would cause the greatest catastrophe in the history of the chaotic universe. It would affect all the creatures in the chaotic universe and overturn the entire chaotic universe. It was a catastrophe. You want to find Mr.? You want to hurt him? At this moment, the extreme love master slowly stood up from the phoenix throne. Her eyes were bloodshot. A violent and crazy aura flickered in the depths of her eyes. The extreme love power of the 9-colored god light began to dim. The undying Heaven Lord was stunned. His face instantly turned serious. He retreated instantly. The undying Heaven Blade was instantly in his hand. He looked at the extreme love master with fear in his eyes. Not only the undying Heaven Lord, but the expressions of the other utmost powerful beings changed as well. This was because something was wrong with the extreme love master at this moment. The aura emanating from her body was terrifying to the extreme, giving them a vague sense of death. Extreme Love, calm down. Don't be rash. The master of time and space's expression changed. He controlled the power of time and space, and could even activate the river of time. He knew the past of Yi Xian and the extreme love master very well. He had already noticed that the Extreme Love Master had entered an extremely crazy state. Mr. won't marry me. My waiting for 3 yuan hui is meaningless. My existence is meaningless. Since all of you want to hurt him, I'll drag all of you down with me before I die. I'll pave the way for Mr.'s Tongtian Dao. The Extreme Love Master at this moment. No, she shouldn't be called the Extreme Love Master. She had already given up her dignity as an Extreme Love Master. She should be called Yi Qingmei now. She was just a girl who followed Mr. back then. She only wanted to pave the way for the Tongtian Dao for the man she loved. Extreme love to man, forget love to heaven. Until death, heaven and earth will be buried together. Rumble. The 9-colored divine light pierced through the heavens and the earth. Yi Qingmei roared at the sky, and the power of extreme emotions was sublimated to the extreme. The entire chaotic universe was rumbling and shaking. The terrifying power of extreme emotions filled the heavens and the earth, and had already affected the entire chaotic world. If she couldn't live for him, she would die for him. But she wouldn't sacrifice for nothing. She wanted to drag these Extreme Love Masters down with her, so that Yi Xian could live on in peace. This was the last thing she could do. Are you crazy? The undead Heaven Lord roared in horror. She instantly cast a great spell. She wanted to leave this world. She wanted to escape from this terrifying place. It wasn't just the undead Heaven Lord. Even the other Extreme Love Masters were panicking. They all wanted to escape from this world. They no longer had any intention of coveting Yi Xian. It wasn't that they were afraid of the Extreme Love Master. They just didn't want to risk their lives with this crazy woman. It should be known that the Extreme Love Master of Time and the Extreme Love Master of Time and Space didn't care about his own life. The power of his self-destruction could destroy the entire 5 regions of chaos. Even the vast chaotic universe would be affected. Chapter 1359. At this moment, the Extreme Love Master was activating his own cultivation. He wanted to self-destruct. If they stayed here, it would be an act of suicide. No one had seen what would happen when an Absolute Love Master self-destructed, but these Absolute Love Masters knew one thing very well. Even if they could survive the explosion, they would be severely injured. Even if they wanted to recover, it would take several yuanhuis. And now, it was already the 10th yuanhuis. Before they could recover, the chaotic reincarnation would open. They couldn't open the door to reincarnation. That was why these Absolute Love Masters were so terrified. None of you can leave. Yi Qingmei's murderous intent shot through the sky. When she reached the peak of her powers, she had already sealed off the entire heavenly palace of extreme love. Even if the most powerful cultivators of all time wanted to break through the seal, they would need some time to escape. Do you really want to fight to the death with us? The Undying Heaven Lord returned. The Undying Heaven blade in his hand was bursting with Nirvana blade light. Now that he had nowhere to run, he could only choose to fight to the death. Everyone, this crazy woman wants to die with us. Let's join forces and kill her. That's the only way we can be safe. The Destruction Master roared. This made the other Absolute Love Masters overflow with killing intent. Clearly, this was the only solution. You lunatic, go to hell. The Undying Heaven Lord attacked first. He couldn't wait for Yi Qingmei to self-destruct. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have a chance to attack. At the same time, the Destiny Master attacked. The merciless destiny power rushed towards the Extreme Love Master. As for the other Absolute Love Masters, they were hesitant. Clearly, they hadn't made a decision yet. She is Brother Ye's wife. Who dares to touch her? Boom! Lu Bai suddenly stood in front of the Extreme Love Master. A black flag appeared in his hand. The broken flag was covered in blood. A mysterious death aura lingered around it. Lu Bai was not afraid at all. He was just an ant in the face of the attacks from the 2 strongest beings. However, he had the mysterious black flag in his hand, which was called the Origin Annihilation. This item had an unimaginable origin, and could definitely stop these strongest beings. Rumble! The black flag fluttered, and the aura of death rippled. This mysterious death light came from the same source as the eternal shadow. In particular, the pitch-black bloodstain on the flag flickered with an extremely mysterious light. It had an incomprehensible power. Wang! The aura of death covered the sky, erasing everything. When the attacks of the two supreme beings landed, the mysterious black flag flickered crazily. The attacks of the two supreme beings were actually dissipated into nothingness. Forbidden item? The Lord of Primal Chaos muttered in shock. The way he looked at Lu Bai deepened. As for the Lord of Destiny and the Undying Heaven Lord, they were shocked as well. They never thought that this puny cultivator would possess a forbidden item that could block off such a powerful attack. Wow! Suddenly, Lu Bai spat out a mouthful of blood. He was blasted away. Although the forbidden item in his hand had blocked the attack for the Extreme Love Master, his cultivation was far too weak compared to the strongest of all time. He had suffered unimaginable damage. In the next moment, the mysterious black flag in Lu Bai's hand turned into ashes. This forbidden item had a long history and was related to the previous chaotic universe. However, no matter how strong it was, the strongest of all time were not to be trifled with. Moreover, it had withstood the attacks of two supreme beings. In the end, although the mysterious black flag had blocked the attack, it had turned into ashes and disappeared. After all, although the black flag contained the same aura of death as the Eternal Shadow, it was still an item. It could not be compared to the Eternal Shadow. Being able to block the attack was the limit of this forbidden item. Die, all of you! Suddenly, the Extreme Love Master's body swelled. The power of the Extreme Love Master had been raised to the extreme. The aura of burying heaven and earth burst forth. It was obvious that the Extreme Love Master had reached the critical point of self-destruction. Don't die. Although Lu Bai was severely injured, he had not yet fainted. He was anxious as he shouted at the Extreme Love Master. Extreme Love, don't! The Lord of Time and Space said anxiously. You crazy woman! The Undying Heaven Lord cursed. I can't be with you in life, so when I die, I'll have you accompany me. At this moment, Yi Qingmei was extremely crazy. She had no intention of living. She only had one thought in her mind, and that was to be buried here with these supreme beings of all time. This was the last thing she could do for Yi Xian. Rumble! The power of the Extreme Love Master covered the sky and earth. Even the law of chaos was collapsing. In just a short moment, the Extreme Love Master would self-destruct and drag everyone down with her. However, it was also at this moment that an ancient voice quietly sounded. Extreme Love, I'm coming. Dong! 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 Walking through the void, the world was silent. A slender figure walked out of the Extreme Love Heavenly Palace. With each step he took, the world trembled. Yi Xian wore a long black robe and had 3,000 strands of hair hanging behind his head. Under the influence of the power of extreme emotion, Yi Xian's hair slightly fluttered as he walked step by step towards the Lord of Extreme Emotion. Because of Yi Xian's appearance, the Extreme Love Master, who was about to self-destruct, finally froze in place. Her originally withered and lifeless eyes gradually regained their vitality. But she looked at Yi Xian in a daze. It was as if time and space were frozen in place. At this moment, all the stars in the vast sky fell to dust. The world sang, "Run away without a trace. Only when you see him, do you know his brilliance." That year, he took her to sing in the sky. That year, he took her to roar in the vast ocean. That year, he took her across the starry sky and the universe. They traveled to the ends of the earth. Even if the sun, the moon, and the stars were in the sky, he would pluck them for her, just to make her smile. Drunk without knowing, the sky was like water, full of dreams, suppressing the galaxy. In the end, she had to wake up from the dream. This dream remained in her memory until she waited bitterly for 3 Yuan Hui. Finally, she met him again today. Sir, I've waited for you for a long, long time. An instant was eternal, and the dream was empty. At this moment, the evil and madness on Yi Qingmei's body slowly dissipated. Her originally swollen body also gradually calmed down. I'm sorry. Yi Xian finally arrived in front of Yi Qingmei. He spoke in a low voice. He didn't know why he had come, nor did he know why he had to apologize to Yi Qingmei. Perhaps he couldn't bear it. Perhaps it was Yi Qingmei's obsession. Or perhaps it was Yi Xian, who didn't want Yi Qingmei to die after doing so much for him. Originally, according to Yi Xian's personality, Yi Qingmei's death was a good thing for him. Not only could he get rid of this troublesome and infatuated woman, but he could also heavily injure these ancient powerhouses. For Yi Xian, this was all good and no harm. But in the end, Yi Xian still came because he couldn't betray his own heart. He also couldn't betray this woman who loved him dearly. Chapter 1360. Why Yi Xian's appearance made these people sigh in relief. They had never realized that Yi Xian was so cute. Just now, the extreme love master had almost succeeded in self-destructing. If the extreme love master had succeeded in self-destructing, then none of them would have had a good ending. Thinking of the danger just now, even as the strongest of all time, they couldn't help but inwardly suck in a cold breath. "Sir, will you marry me?" Yi Qingmei asked in a daze. When Yi Qingmei looked at Yi Xian in a daze as he said those words, everyone's gazes were focused on Yi Xian. Even the gazes of these ancient experts were extremely strange as they looked at Yi Xian. They were obviously waiting for his reply. "I will." Yi Xian was not an indecisive person, and he was not one to drag his feet. Since he had come here, he had already made his choice, which explained everything. "Tianfu, please change your clothes." At some point, an old woman in yellow appeared in front of Yi Xian. She respectfully presented the red robe to him. Clearly, this red robe had been prepared for Yi Xian for a long time. "Wait!" Suddenly, Yi Qingmei waved the old woman away. A sad smile flashed across her face. She shook her head sadly and said, "Sir, you don't want to marry me. You just don't want to ruin my reputation, right?" At this moment, Yi Xian was stunned and speechless. He frowned slightly. He didn't want to hurt Yi Qingmei, but he also didn't want to go against his true feelings. Indeed, he didn't want to marry Yi Qingmei. He didn't want Yi Qingmei to die for him, and he didn't want this woman's reputation to be ruined for him. "I want to marry you." For the first time in his life, Yi Xian lied. This was his true lie, and it was a white lie. Although it went against Yi Xian's original intentions, he could only tell this lie. Why Yi Xian waved his hand. The red robe in the old woman's hand was worn on his body. He was already handsome to begin with. Coupled with the red wedding robe on his body, it added an invisible charm to him. "Sir." Hearing Yi Xian's lies and seeing Yi Xian's actions, Yi Qingmei was very moved. She gently stepped forward and wrapped her arms around the crook of Yi Xian's arm, slowly leaning her head against his chest. She had waited for an entire 3 yuan hui, and this moment had finally arrived. "Brother Yi." Lu Bai slowly walked over. No one knew Yi Xian better than him. He nodded slightly at Yi Xian. Although there was helplessness in his eyes, it was more of encouragement. A woman could die for him, and even ruin her reputation for him. This kind of affection was as precious as the eternal blue sky. Even Lu Bai was touched by it. "Brother Bai Yi, please be our witness." Yi Xian cupped his hands and bowed. "All right." Lu Bai nodded slowly. Although his white robe was stained with blood, and he was severely injured, it did not hinder his peerless demeanor. Heaven and earth are mysterious, and the universe is chaotic. Today, Yi Qingmei and Yi Xian are married. Lu Bai was announcing the marriage, and the entire place became extremely quiet. Even the most powerful people of all time who had bad intentions were silent, and did not disturb the wedding. The newlyweds, dressed in red robes, stood hand in hand between heaven and earth. The wedding of the most powerful was naturally different from that of mortals. They only needed to pay their respects to the chaos of heaven and earth, and with the chaos of the universe as their witness, they could become husband and wife. At this moment, Yi Qingmei was very happy. She held tightly onto Yi Xian's arm. She no longer had the majesty of a powerful person. It was as if she had turned into the carefree little girl of the past. The most powerful people watching the ceremony all watched silently. At this time, they did not disturb them at all. They did not want to anger Yi Qingmei, this crazy woman. All beings bear witness, and the chaos serves as a witness. After paying your respects to the chaos, you two are husband and wife. Rumble. When Lu Bai finished speaking, an extremely shocking and strange thing happened. The entire chaos of the universe actually rumbled and vibrated. Strands of mysterious aura descended, causing the entire extreme love heavenly palace to fall into a peaceful atmosphere. Heavenly Heart of Chaos. How is this possible? How can the Heavenly Heart of Chaos appear? What kind of joke is this? In the next moment, the most powerful people shouted in shock. Even the living beings watching from all directions were stunned. There were even sounds of people inhaling cold air continuously. Not to mention the most powerful people who were extremely shocked. Even the extreme love master, who was deeply moved, was slightly stunned. Clearly, he was also stunned by this strange phenomenon. Heavenly Heart of Chaos. Yi Xian whispered in shock. He was completely stunned and speechless. Then his brows were tightly knitted together. His heart was already in turmoil. What was the Heavenly Heart of Chaos? The Heavenly Heart of Chaos had another name, and that was the Heart of Tao. It was also known as the Heavenly Heart of the Great Path. As the name implied, the Heavenly Heart of Chaos was the will of the chaotic universe. The chaotic universe had 12 periods. Only one most powerful person could be born in each period. The one who was born had to be compatible with the Heavenly Heart of Chaos. That was why they could become the most powerful person of all time. Every time the Heavenly Heart of Chaos appeared, it was the birth of a most powerful person of all time. However, the person who achieved Tao in the 10th period was the Lord of all spirits. When he achieved Tao, he was already compatible with the Heavenly Heart of Chaos. Logically speaking, the Heavenly Heart of Chaos shouldn't appear in the 10th period. However, something unbelievable happened. In the 10th period, on the day of Yi Xian and Yi Qingmei's wedding, the Heavenly Heart of Chaos actually appeared. It even descended with a peaceful aura, as if it was witnessing their wedding. Do it! In the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord's eyes turned red. It should be known that the Heavenly Heart of Chaos appearing twice in a period was something that had never happened before. If they could seize the Heavenly Heart of Chaos aura, they could completely create a most powerful person of all time. Although no one knew why the Heavenly Heart of Chaos appeared, it was no longer important. What was important was that they had to seize this opportunity and truly grasp it in their own hands. Don't act rashly. Suddenly, the Lord of Chaos roared majestically. Unfortunately, the undying Heaven Lord didn't care at all. He directly used his most powerful technique to seize the Heavenly Heart of Chaos aura. Crack! Suddenly, a golden lightning landed on the undying Heaven Lord's body, instantly turning him into a bloody mess. An unimaginably terrifying will also press down on the undying Heaven Lord's body. Wah! The undying Heaven Lord spat out a mouthful of blood. The undying Heaven blade in his hand fell to the ground. At this moment, he felt as if he was facing the entire chaotic universe. It gave him a terrifying feeling of being on the verge of death. Fool! This Heavenly Heart is not the Heavenly Heart of Chaos. This is the blessing of chaos, and it even contains the will of chaos. Are you courting death? The Lord of Chaos was, after all, the first paragon of all time to be born in the chaotic universe. He knew too many secrets about the chaotic universe. At this moment, he loudly rebuked the undying Heaven Lord. The blessing of chaos. The undying Heaven Lord's body trembled, and his mangled body instantly recovered. However, his eyes were filled with gloominess. Fortunately, he was a paragon of all time. Although he suffered a terrifying blow from the chaotic universe, it didn't hurt his foundation. Chapter 1361. The will of the Grand Tao of Chaos has descended. What a wedding of a paragon! The Master of Destiny frowned. Clearly, he understood something inside. This is the blessing of the chaotic universe. It represents the will of the chaotic universe. If anyone tries to steal the Heavenly Heart of Chaos, even a paragon will die without a grave. The Master of Time and Space said coldly. How strange. It's just a wedding. Why would it draw out the Heavenly Heart of Chaos and the will of the chaotic universe? The sky-devouring demon lord narrowed his eyes and murmured. Clearly, this matter was not so simple. It was just that no one could figure out the reason. As the witness of all living beings in the primal chaos, is there anyone who objects to this marriage? Lu Bai's expression was emotionless. His voice rang through the world. If no one objected to this marriage, then the two of them would formally become husband and wife, after paying their respects to the primal chaos. I object. Suddenly, an extremely discordant voice rang out. This voice came from afar, and a pitch-black figure walked over step by step from afar. His terrifying aura was blooming to the extreme. The Lord of the Extreme Devil? The master of time and space's expression changed slightly. A sliver of worry flashed through his eyes. He had already thought of this possibility before arriving at the wedding. He never thought that the thing he was worried about would still happen. Extreme love and extreme devil. There was only a single word difference between the two. Although there were coincidences in the world, the titles of extreme love and extreme devil among the paragons were definitely not as simple as a coincidence. At the same time, the guests fell silent. They all stared at the Lord of the Extreme Devil in surprise. Yi Qingmei's expression changed as well. She looked at the Lord of the Extreme Devil with a complicated gaze. Thump, thump, thump. Solitary throughout the ages, the Extreme Devil and Extreme Devil were born. The winds and clouds changed. The bright white clouds turned pitch black. Only the dark, boundless figure strolled over. It was like the firmament of the universe, like an ancient star. The Lord of the Extreme Devil took a step forward and finally appeared at the center of the wedding. When he opened and closed his eyes, only terrifying demonic light flickered. He only had eyes for Yi Qingmei in front of him. Why do you object? As the witness of Yi Xian and Yi Qingmei's wedding, Liu Bai fully expressed his current identity. Even in the face of a paragon who objected to this marriage, he still asked calmly, "He's not worthy." The Lord of the Extreme Devil suddenly looked at Yi Xian, and a sliver of terrifying killing intent appeared. It was as if the Lord of the Extreme Devil had some deep enmity with Yi Xian. If it were not for the fact that Yi Xian was right next to Yi Xian, he would have obliterated him long ago. Supreme Demon, don't mess around. Boom. Yi Qingmei's expression grew cold. She stepped forward and stood in front of Yi Xian. She looked at the Lord of the Supreme Devil with a fierce gaze, but there was also a trace of helplessness in her eyes. Qingmei, I don't like it when you call me Supreme Devil. I hope you can call me Su Baining. The Supreme Devil Lord said bitterly. Okay, Su Baining. This is the last time I call you that. Can you stop messing around? Yi Qingmei said. Nonsense. Ha ha ha. The Supreme Devil Lord was stunned for a moment. Then he let out a wild laugh. His laughter was very bleak, and carried with it an indescribable sorrow. He suddenly pointed at Yi Xian and said, Am I messing around, or is he messing around? Why? Tell me why. What right does he have to marry you? What right does he have to marry you? Have I done anything less than him? The Supreme Devil Lord roared madly. His demonic chi was extremely chaotic, and his entire person seemed to have sunk into madness. He was definitely not in a better state than Yi Qingmei, and in fact seemed to be even more serious. I'm sorry, perhaps because she felt guilty, or perhaps because she couldn't bear it, but in the face of the Supreme Devil Lord's madness, Yi Qingmei could only spit out these 3 words. At this moment, the Supreme Devil Lord was extremely bitter. His demonic chi covered the sky, but it could not hide the deepest sorrow in his heart. Qingmei, you've waited for him for 3 full yuan hui, and I've also waited for you for 3 full yuan hui. Back then, you said you wanted to become the strongest of all time. You said you wanted to wait for his return. Fine, then I, Su Baining, am willing to give up my position as the strongest of all time in the 8th yuan hui. I'll even hide myself and not fight with you. I'll only appear in the 9th yuan hui and become the strongest of all time. I've always been by your side, watching over you silently. I've been waiting for the day you change your mind. But today, you're going to marry him. You've finally waited for his return. But what am I, Su Baining, worth? The Supreme Devil Lord roared madly. His demonic chi became more and more terrifying. His eyes were bright blood red. Clearly, all the emotions he'd suppressed for 3 yuan hui erupted today. Su Baining, I once said that the only person I love is him. I've told you this a long time ago. Yi Qingmei exhaled slowly. Yeah, you only have him in your heart, but I only have you in my heart. I originally could have created the supreme spiritual force, but because of my obsession and feelings for you, I fell into the demonic path. That's why I became the Supreme Devil Lord. Is everything I've done unable to change your heart? The Supreme Devil Lord roared madly. Just what are you trying to do? Yi Qingmei's voice gradually turned cold. She discovered that the Supreme Devil Lord's gaze towards Yi Xian was extremely terrifying. It was filled with unprecedented killing intent. Qingmei, if he was the same as he was back then, with the cultivation of a supreme, Su Baining, would have turned around and left without another word. I would have loyally given you my blessings. The Lord of the Extreme Devil paused for a moment before his bewitched eyes suddenly fell onto Yi Xian. His voice was as cold as a 10,000-year-old river as he said, "But look at him. He's only at the Yang birth realm. How can he be worthy of you? How can he be worthy of you? If you dare touch him in the slightest, our former friendship will be severed," Yi Qingmei said coldly. "Friendship?" The Supreme Devil Lord muttered in a daze. His lips curled into a demonic smile. "So we only have friendship between us. Fine, fine, fine. Then I'll kill him, and go to the Yellow Springs with you." Rumble. The Tongtian pierced through the ground. The Supreme Devil Lord's terrifying aura rolled out in all directions. At this moment, the Supreme Devil Lord had completely gone mad. The demonic chi and killing intent that erupted from him were simply terrifying. If one were to ask who was the most feared of the 10 strongest, it would definitely be the sky-devouring demon lord. However, if one were to ask who was the most insane, it would definitely be the Supreme Devil Lord. The Supreme Devil, as the name implied, he was a completely demonic person. He was a person who looked up to heaven from hell. He yearned for a glimmer of light in his heart, but he threw himself into the darkness. The Supreme Devil should not exist in the primal chaos. This was because a person of the Supreme Devil Lord had no rationality to speak of. His heart was devoid of light, and he could not possibly become the strongest of all time. The Supreme Devil Lord, Su Baining, was in the darkness. His only source of light was the Supreme Devil Lord Yi Qingmei. This was why he could maintain his rationality and use his deepest obsession to become the strongest of all time in the 9th period. However, today, his last remaining glimmer of light was about to dissipate. This was because the person Yi Qingmei liked had returned. He truly did not have the slightest chance. His entire being was about to enter the darkness and become the most demonic person in the world. "Yi Xian, if you're a man, don't hide behind a woman. Otherwise Su Baining will look down on you," the Supreme Devil Lord roared madly at Yi Xian. Chapter 1362. Extreme Murderous Intent. The Wrath of the Extreme Demon. Tongtian's light of the Extreme Demon filled the sky. The Lord of the Extreme Demon walked step by step towards Yi Xian. Yi Qingmei shielded Yi Xian behind her. She had already released the power of extreme emotion. Clearly, she could not allow the Lord of the Extreme Demon to harm Yi Xian in the slightest. "This is between me and him." Suddenly Yi Xian stepped forward. He gently pushed Yi Qingmei aside. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He looked at the Lord of the Extreme Demon without any fear. "Sir." Yi Qingmei's expression changed. She was about to pull Yi Xian behind her. But before she could do anything, Yi Xian's voice rang out. "Whether in the past, present, or future, Yi Xian is not someone who hides behind a woman. This concerns my dignity and my pride," Yi Xian said softly. At this moment, Yi Xian's back seemed familiar to Yi Qingmei. Her eyes began to glaze over. A feeling that made her heart tremble silently grew in her. "Sir, you. Yi Qingmei stared at Yi Xian's back and said in a daze. She seemed to see that person from all those years ago. The same back, the same temperament. If there really was a difference, perhaps it was just that the two of them were not in the same time period. "Brother Yi." Lu Bai stepped forward. He could not let Yi Xian throw his life away. His deep eyes turned slightly. A mysterious light quietly flashed through them. "Brother Bai, don't worry. I won't die yet." Before Lu Bai stepped forward, Yi Xian spoke calmly. This made Lu Bai's expression change. He looked at Yi Xian silently. He knew that Yi Xian was going to face the Lord of the Extreme Demon alone. This concerned Yi Xian's dignity. However, no one noticed that Lu Bai's eyes were extremely mysterious. It was as if there were whirlpools spinning in the depths of his eyes. His entire temperament was quietly changing. "If Brother Yi dies, everyone here will be buried with him." That was all Lu Bai said. Then, He lowered his head and remained silent. However, no one paid attention to his words. They only treated him as an extremely arrogant person. However, if one were to observe carefully, they would discover that a mysterious brilliance had streaked across the space between his eyebrows. This brilliance was ancient and profound. Although it was only a flash, it seemed to have quietly unlocked some kind of shackle within his body. Yi Xian, you are not worthy of Qingmei. You will never be worthy of her. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend roared madly as his demonic power surged out. He only needed a thought to reduce Yi Xian to ashes. However, the Lord of the Extreme Devil didn't want Yi Xian to die just yet. Killing Yi Xian was easy, but he wanted to vent all of his anger and resentment for the past 3 yuans on Yi Xian. The current me is indeed not worthy of her, but she doesn't love you either. Is that right? Yi Xian's expression was very calm when facing the Lord of the Extreme Devil. It could even be said that he was completely unperturbed. However, the more he acted like this, the angrier the Lord of the Extreme Devil became. You're still the same. You haven't changed at all. You're still as arrogant as ever. Back then, I wasn't a match for you before I became an extreme fiend. But now that I've become an extreme fiend, do you think I'll fall beneath your feet like before? The Lord of the Extreme Fiend roared. Today, I'll grind your bones to dust and crush you beneath my feet. Let's see if you still dare to be so arrogant. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend was completely enraged. You can't kill me, Yi Xian said calmly. Whoosh! As Yi Xian's words fell, the guests all around burst into an uproar. They looked at Yi Xian, as if he was an idiot. Was Yi Xian scared out of his wits? Did he not know who was standing in front of him? The Lord of the Extreme Fiend. An extreme fiend. The leader of the Ninth Element Union. If the other party wanted to kill Yi Xian, it would be easier than crushing an ant. But what was Yi Xian saying? To think that he would say that the Lord of the Extreme Fiend couldn't kill him. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? Could Yi Xian really be scared out of his wits? It wasn't just the guests who were looking at Yi Xian, as though he was a lunatic. Even the other extreme fiends were looking at Yi Xian strangely. Only the Lord of Time and Space was frowning as a bad premonition rose from the depths of his heart. Could it be? Could it be that he was going to appear? The next moment, the Lord of Time and Space was taken aback as he looked over at Yi Xian. It was only then that he realized that Yi Xian's aura was extremely still. It was extremely similar to when he was facing the godly yin-yang punishment back then. Impossible. This was absolutely impossible. Although Yi Xian had created the future transfiguration, this forbidden technique wasn't allowed by the Chaos Verse. It wasn't something he could use whenever he wanted to. Back then, the godly yin-yang punishment was the only reason he was able to use this forbidden technique. But now, the godly yin-yang punishment was nowhere to be seen. How could Yi Xian use his future transfiguration? Just as the space-time lord was bewildered, his stunned expression instantly froze. His eyes abruptly widened, because he had discovered something extremely terrifying. The heavenly heart of chaos? It was actually the heavenly heart of chaos. The heavenly heart of chaos's aura blotted out the sky, completely obscuring the Chaosverse workings. The Lord of Time and Space instantly understood. Extreme Fiend, today is the day of Extreme Love's wedding. Stop messing around. The Lord of Time roared angrily, his words filled with anxiety. He seemed to be trying to dissuade the Lord of Extreme Fiend. But in truth, he was trying to stop an unimaginable battle. No one understood Yi Xian's future transfiguration better than the Lord of Time and Space. If Yi Xian truly succeeded in using his future transfiguration and fusing his future self with his present self, the Lord of Extreme Fiend probably wouldn't be a match for Yi Xian at all. He was someone who could traverse the river of time. Although he was merely an illusory existence of the future, he was someone who could influence all 3 periods of time: the past, the present, and the future. Setting aside whether or not the Lord of Extreme Fiend could defeat Yi Xian's future transfiguration, something extremely terrifying would happen if Yi Xian used his future transfiguration. It was even possible that some unimaginable existences would be drawn over. These terrifying existences were known as taboo existences. They were existences that surpassed the primordial sovereigns and shared the same origin as the eternal shadow. They were existences that even the primordial sovereigns found difficult to comprehend. If taboo existences were drawn out, the entire chaos-verse would be thrown into chaos. This was definitely not an outcome that the Lord of Time and Space wished to see. Stand down, extreme fiend. Perhaps the Lord of Chaos sensed something as well, but he suddenly stood in front of the Lord of Extreme Fiend. The laws of chaos circulated around him, clearly intending to prevent this from happening. Scram! Although the Lord of Extreme Fiend had ascended in the 9th period, his hatred for Yi Xian was deeply rooted in his heart. How could the Lord of Chaos possibly stop him? Boom! Extreme Fiend's power erupted and blasted towards the Lord of Chaos. The Lord of Extreme Fiend had long since thrown caution to the wind, completely disregarding his own life. Even though the Lord of Chaos was known as the #1 expert among the primordial sovereigns, he didn't want to fight the crazed Lord of Extreme Fiend. Chapter 1363. Bang! The Lord of Primal Chaos struck out with his palm, directly dissolving the supreme demonic power. His entire body retreated, but his brows were tightly furrowed, and a trace of worry flashed across his eyes. Yi Xian, kneel and accept your death. Rumble! The Lord of Primal Chaos flipped his palm like the sky, and the terrifying supreme demonic power transformed into a heavenly demonic palm that slammed down on Yi Xian. This strike wasn't meant to take Yi Xian's life, but merely to suppress Yi Xian and make him kneel before him. The Lord of Primal Chaos wanted Yi Xian to kneel at his feet and beg for forgiveness. He wanted to vent all the anger and resentment he had accumulated over the past 3 yuans, no matter the cost. Burying Heaven Technique. Transcending past and present. Reversing time. Disrupting heaven and earth. Transcending yin and yang. Transcending the future. Deducing primal chaos. The heavens chanted endlessly. In the face of the Lord of Primal Chaos's powerful strike, Yi Xian's figure remained immovable. His lips moved slightly, and the general principles of the Burying Heaven technique came out of his mouth. This was his technique in Tao. Although it wasn't complete, it was the foundation of his life, and it was the forbidden technique to transcend the future. Kneel. Although the Lord of Primal Chaos had descended into madness, it didn't mean that he had lost his mind. He could already sense that Yi Xian's current aura was extremely strange, and it made his heart tremble. But no matter what, he had to suppress Yi Xian today, make him kneel at his feet and repent for his mistakes. He had to show Yi Qingmei just how unbearable the man she loved was. Rumble! The heavenly demon palm was descending, and it was as terrifying as a millstone that killed the heavens and the earth. The extreme demonic energy poured down towards Yi Xian, but Yi Xian remained motionless like an ancient stubborn rock. However, the ground beneath his feet was already filled with terrifying cracks, as if it would sink into the ground at any moment. Dong dong dong. After condensing the chaotic universe and shattering the ancient and modern worlds, an obscure wave of energy bloomed around Yi Xian. His chanting grew more and more mysterious, and the heavens began to respond to his chanting. Otherwise the future. Yi Xian's eyes snapped open, and he roared with the voice of the past, present, and future. The heaven-burying art erupted with a Tongtian light that seemed to pierce through the primal chaos. Although it didn't emit any terrifying fluctuations, it caused everyone's minds to tremble. Tap tap tap. Past, present, and future, the chaos no longer existed. A black figure seemed to cross the barrier of time and space and walk towards the present world. His figure was blurry, as if he would shatter at any moment, but he still walked firmly towards Yi Xian. It's him? How is this possible? What happened? In the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord and the others roared in shock. All the utmost powerful beings stared fixedly at the figure walking towards Yi Xian, as if they were trying to ascertain if this was the same person who had appeared before. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, this black figure was blurry and distorted, but he still walked towards Yi Xian resolutely. At the same time, Yi Xian walked towards him as well, until the figure merged with him. The next moment, the shock waves that erupted from it left everyone speechless. Rumble, burying the heaven and earth, burying the past and present, trampling on the primal chaos of the universe, condensing the heaven and earth into the earth. That light that could destroy the past and present of the universe, sweeping away all the time and space, shot up into the heavens. Yi Xian was dressed in black robes, with 3,000 strands of black hair hanging behind his head. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his robes flapped loudly. With one hand pointing to the heavens, and the other pointing to the earth, his words were the law, and his actions were the law. Bury. His words were the law, burying the heaven and earth. At this moment, Yi Xian was way too mysterious. Even though he didn't burst forth with an utmost powerful might, there was still an aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. Pft! The heaven demon palm that was slamming down towards Yi Xian froze for a moment, before disappearing into nothing. It was as if it had never appeared before. Sir! Suddenly, just as everyone was shocked speechless, a delicate cry came from behind Yi Xian. Yi Qingmei was staring at Yi Xian's back in a daze. At this moment, she had become extremely weak, because Yi Xian was the true person in her heart. 3,000 flourishes have all fallen, and the past and present are but empty dreams. Why do you persist in this? At this moment, Yi Xian was too mysterious and too imposing. He slowly turned around to look at Yi Qingmei. A slight smile appeared on his face, but it also contained a trace of helplessness. Sir, I've waited for you for a long time. You finally appeared. Yi Qingmei walked in front of Yi Xian in a daze. Her eyes were already misty. Love to the extreme, and forget to love to the heavens. If you could understand the last 4 words, then you would be able to transcend the omnipotent. Unfortunately, Yi Xian sighed softly, with an indescribable sense of sorrow. Qingmei doesn't want to be the omnipotent, and I don't want to transcend. I just want to be by your side. Yi Qingmei bit her lips. She couldn't stop the emotions in her eyes from overflowing. At this moment, there was only Yi Xian in her eyes. There was no room for anyone else. What was sowed in the past will be reaped today. Since you want to marry me, then I will marry you. But I hope you won't regret it in the future, because this path really shouldn't have been taken by you. At this moment, Yi Xian understood the past, present, and chaos. Although the path ahead of him was unclear, he already had a faint premonition. At this moment he was the future, but also not the future. He was just a combination of people from 2 different times and times, giving him a mysterious and unfathomable power. He spoke from the bottom of his heart. I won't regret it. Qingmei will never regret it. Yi Qingmei gripped Yi Xian's hand tightly. You finally appeared. I'll take your life. The supreme demon went berserk. His roar shook the sky. Su Baining went completely mad. His eyes turned blood red. It was as if he had turned into a terrifying ancient beast that was about to devour someone. He charged madly at Yi Xian. Supreme demon skill. The lord of the extreme demonic roared and unleashed his greatest power. His punch seemed to be able to penetrate the universe. The entire heavenly palace of extreme love rumbled and shook as if it was about to collapse at any moment. Time froze. The world was silent. Yi Xian gently pushed Yi Qingmei away. A pair of sword fingers bloomed with a mysterious gray light. He turned around and pointed at the supreme demon master. Fist and finger touched. Everything was silent. This finger seemed to have frozen the world. This finger seemed to have frozen the universe. Chaos did not appear. Precepts were not born. Even the supreme demon's power could not advance. Because of love, one's heart is filled with great sorrow. Perhaps this really is a kind of tragedy. Yi Xian spoke softly. His fingertip touched the supreme demon master's fist. No matter how much Su Baining roared, he could not advance. Lawless and formless. 10,000 laws and 10,000 forms. Supreme demon no sky. All things perish. After all, the strongest of all time was the strongest of all time. This was especially true for Su Baining, who had already gone mad. He was called the Supreme Demon Master. There was no way he was that simple. Right now his power had reached the peak. Go to hell. Boom. Supreme Demon destroys the sky. The fist light could destroy the world. This fist was vast and boundless. It could destroy the world. Even though Yi Xian had used his future transformation, he was now in a terrifying state. Facing Su Baining's supreme demon fist, Yi Xian felt a heavy pressure that Yi Xian's fingertip was still on the supreme demon master's fist, but he was also retreating. The supreme demon master seemed to have gone mad. He was venting his power. He wanted to completely destroy Yi Xian. Break! It was a voice that buried the sky. Yi Xian frowned. He flicked his finger. A gray light suddenly appeared on his fingertip. There was a loud explosion between the two of them. Bang! In the next moment, the Supreme Demon Master seemed to have been hit by the eternal sky. He was sent flying. The Supreme Demon Master's power around him was instantly shattered. He crashed into the ground. Chapter 1364. Everyone was shocked and deathly still. No one had imagined that the terrifying Lord of the Extreme Fiend would be sent flying by Yi Xian with a single strike. Everyone's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Not to mention the guests, even the other eternal sovereigns were frowning. They looked at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in their eyes. Many of these sovereigns had crossed paths with the future self before. They knew that the future self was strong, but definitely not that much stronger than an eternal sovereign. He definitely wasn't some sort of taboo character. Yet the Lord of the Extreme Fiend was actually at a disadvantage. This was simply inconceivable. He's definitely not that strong. Suddenly, the Undying Heaven Lord muttered darkly. He'd fought the future self before. While he didn't dare say that he could win, he definitely wasn't at a disadvantage. Although the Undying Heaven Lord didn't think the Lord of the Extreme Fiend was his match, the gap between the two wasn't that great. Yet, Yi Xian's strike just now had sent the Lord of the Extreme Fiend flying. There was definitely something wrong with this. Kakik! Suddenly, before anyone could snap out of their thoughts, the Lord of the Extreme Fiend let out a terrifying, owl-like laugh. This laughter was filled with anger and resentment, and a terrifying demonic aura surged into the heavens. Boom! The earth quaked, and everything was destroyed. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend slowly climbed up from the ground. He wasn't injured in the slightest. Because he was an eternal sovereign, his supreme battle constitution was enough to make him invincible. Back then, before I reached the Tao, I lost to you. But now, I've reached the Tao for 3 yuan hui. Do you think you can still crush me like before? Rumble! Ancient demonic clouds and the world shook. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend was sublimating to the extreme. His world-shaking demonic aura spread out as he walked step by step toward Yi Xian. Extreme killing intent that could destroy all things wasn't just a saying. There was an unimaginable terror contained within. Even though Yi Xian had used the forbidden art of transforming the future, Yi Xian's brows were tightly knitted together in the face of the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's pressure. If you want to fight, I'll fight. However, the battlefield will be in the Chaos Verse. Yi Xian said coolly. He had the peerless grace of his future self, and the decisiveness of his present self. As Yi Xian took a step forward, he soared into the heavens and entered the Chaos Verse. The battle between the strongest would destroy the heaven and earth. If the battle were to take place in the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace, the entire palace would be annihilated. Moreover, Yi Xian did not want his friends to be affected by this battle. Where do you think you're going? The Lord of the Extreme Fiend howled madly. With a single step, he chased after Yi Xian. As for the other utmost powerful beings, they exchanged glances and nodded to one another before entering the starry universe as well. Qingmei, I'll leave Brother Yi to you. Suddenly, just as Yi Qingmei was about to leave, Lu Bai's voice rang out. This caused Yi Qingmei to turn around and look at Lu Bai, only to find that he was nodding kindly at her. This person? At this moment, for some reason, Yi Qingmei's heart trembled slightly. Logically speaking, it was a great disrespect for Lu Bai to call her by her full name. After all, she was an utmost powerful being. Even if Lu Bai was Yi Xian's brother, he should not call her by her full name. However, for some reason, Yi Qingmei did not feel that anything was wrong. Instead, she felt that Lu Bai was on the same level as her. In fact, A trace of respect for Lu Bai rose in her heart. Don't worry. As long as I'm here, Mr. will not be in any danger. Yi Qingmei dispelled the doubts in her heart. However, she was already suspicious of Lu Bai. This was because Lu Bai gave her an extremely mysterious feeling. She had never felt this way before. Previously, Yi Qingmei had thought that Yi Xian was the only person in history. However, she was now extremely certain that this Lu Bai was definitely not simple. As for why he was not simple, she could not pinpoint it. Yi Qingmei had already entered the starry universe. Lu Bai's eyes looked deeply at her back. Then he quietly left the venue. Just as he came quietly, he also left quietly. However, no one noticed that a faint white light flashed between Lu Bai's eyebrows. It was as if some kind of shackle in his body was quietly unlocking. In the chaotic starry sky, the universe was vast. Yi Xian, dressed in black, stood with his hands behind his back. Countless stars were revolving around him. Compared to these stars, he looked extremely small. However, the light that bloomed from his body could not be ignored. It was as if he was the only one in history. It was as if he was the brightest star in the chaotic universe. Yi Xian, today, you and I will not rest until one of us is dead. Rumble. Demonic clouds rolled, and the starry sky trembled. Su Baining, the lord of the extreme demonic, came with a strong murderous intent. Billions of miles of the starry river trembled. Numerous large stars showed signs of cracks. At this moment, he had already unleashed his full power. His supreme power spread out without restraint. Solitary traveler of eternity, blood sea overflows the heavens. Although you are an ultimate, in my eyes, you are nothing more than a skeleton on the path of reincarnation. What do you have to fight me? At this moment, Yi Xian was too arrogant and too mysterious. He was the future him, but he was also the present him. He was only a person born from the combination of two dimensions, but he already possessed a great terror that the ultimate could not imagine. He also had the unparalleled determination to suppress the greatest enemies of the past and present. The extreme demonic selflessness, slaughter the chaos. Today, I will shatter your pride and trample on your dignity. I will grind your bones to dust and see if you can still be so arrogant. The lord of the extreme demonic roared at the chaos. His palms drew a circle that enveloped the chaos. The extreme demonic power turned billions of miles of the starry sky into a land of darkness. Only endless demonic chi rumbled and surged, causing one's heart to tremble. Demonic chaos sky withers. Roar. The lord of the extreme demonic let out a ferocious roar. The great demonic art was already brewing. It directly turned into a billowing demonic sea that drowned Yi Xian. Wherever the terrifying demonic sea passed, the stars turned to dust. Even the surging sea of stars disappeared. Nirvana. Boom. Pointing a finger at the sea of stars and stirring up the chaos, Yi Xian's sword finger cut through the starry sky and the universe. A wisp of gray light flickered on his fingertip. Then, it exploded with a terrifying might that could destroy all things, surging towards the lord of the extreme demonic. This was the Nirvana heavenly finger. It was originally a great art from the undying immortal scripture. However, this art was not completely the Nirvana heavenly finger. Although it contained the power of Nirvana, it was more of Yi Xian's heaven-burying art. It nurtured his art and Tao, and had a terrifying killing effect that surpassed the Nirvana heavenly finger. Rumble. The sea of extreme demonic and the Nirvana heavenly finger collided with a loud bang. Two extremely terrifying powers completely erupted, and then burst out in all directions. Bang! 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 Huge stars exploded one after another. Terrifying cracks appeared in the starry sky. Even the many supreme experts who had just arrived hurriedly dodged. They all looked at the two of them, with a serious expression. I am the supreme expert, invincible in the chaos. I will kill you, heretic. I will destroy you, scourge. The lord of the extreme demonic roared crazily. His supreme battle body erupted with a terrifying light. A Tongtian demonic flag appeared in his hand. His entire person charged towards Yi Xian. Chapter 1365. Halberd come. Yi Xian flipped his hand, and the heaven-destroying halberd, which he hadn't used in a long time, appeared in his hand. This time, the heaven-destroying halberd was different from before. When Yi Xian used future transfiguration, it exploded with a terrifying wave of murderous intent, and also attacked the Lord of the Extreme Devil. Clang! The Tongtian demonic flag and heaven-destroying halberd clashed. The two divine weapons were terrifying to the extreme. This part of the universe began to explode, instantly turning into a vacuum zone. Yi Xian, I want your life. The Lord of the Extreme Devil waved the Tongtian demonic flag wildly, smashing it down at Yi Xian. If you were a forbidden character, I might be a bit wary. But you're still far from that. Yi Xian spoke like an ancient river. The heaven-destroying halberd shook the chaotic space, and also slashed down at the Lord of the Extreme Devil. Clang! 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 The chaotic explosion was deafening. The two divine weapons were too terrifying. Moreover, they were imbued with their cultivations. When they attacked each other, they exploded with terrifying sparks. The sparks spread out in all directions, instantly annihilating everything within 100 million miles. If there were any living beings below the level of the ultimate existences around, they would definitely die without a grave. Die! Bang! The ultimate existences were still the ultimate existences, let alone the ultimate existences of the Extreme Devil. The Lord of the Extreme Devil was fighting with his life on the line. He didn't care about Yi Xian's heaven-destroying halberd at all. The Tongtian demonic flag in his hand fiercely smashed down at Yi Xian's head. Pfft! Yi Xian's halberd pierced the Lord of the Extreme Devil's chest, but his opponent's demonic flag was already above his head. However, Yi Xian's face was as cold as ice. If the Lord of the Extreme Devil dared to fight to the death with him, would Yi Xian not dare to fight to the death with him? Bang! Yi Xian slightly tilted his head, and finally dodged the fatal blow from the Lord of the Extreme Devil. The heavenly demon flag fiercely smashed onto his shoulder, instantly smashing half of Yi Xian's body into a bloody mess. Die, die! The Lord of the Extreme Devil's chest was pierced through, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. He raised the devil flag in his hand again, and fiercely smashed it towards Yi Xian. From the looks of it, he seemed to want to smash Yi Xian into meat paste. You're still far from it. Yi Xian's eyes were dark, sinister, and terrifying. He shook the heaven-punishing halberd, causing the Lord of the Extreme Devil's chest to begin to crack. The terrifying bloody hole instantly expanded. It was obvious that he was also filled with killing intent. Puffed! Bang! An extremely terrifying and bloody thing happened. This time, Yi Xian wasn't able to dodge the fatal blow. His entire body was smashed to pieces. However, the Lord of the Extreme Devil didn't have it easy either. Yi Xian's heaven-slaying halberd was the #1 weapon of slaughter in all of history. Under Yi Xian's terrifying control, it instantly exploded the Lord of the Extreme Devil's body. Hua hua hua! The Lord of the Extreme Devil turned into a rain of blood. His blood was as terrifying as sulfuric acid, directly drenching the starry skies. Although Yi Xian had used his future transformation, his physical body was still only at the Yang birth realm. There was no way it could compare to the Lord of the Extreme Devil's ultimate battle body. There were no anomalies. Seems like these two are not going to rest until one of them is dead. The undying Heaven Lord laughed coldly, as if he was watching a good show. The other sovereigns nodded solemnly. Clearly this battle was too intense, and they were all fired up. However, these sovereigns also knew that even if the two of them had destroyed each other's physical body, they wouldn't die so easily. Indeed, after just 3 breaths, the Lord of the Extreme Devil's shattered flesh was rapidly regenerating, returning to his original state in an instant. On the other side, Yi Xian's future transformation lived up to its name as a taboo art. In an instant, he regenerated his body, and appeared in front of everyone as good as new. However, these supreme experts also discovered one thing. The aura of the Supreme Devil Lord hadn't changed at all, and was still as strong as before. On the other hand, Yi Xian was different. At this moment, his aura had started to weaken, and his body had started to become illusory. It was obvious that the attack just now had caused him to be at a disadvantage. This physical body is simply too weak. Yi Xian frowned slightly and sighed in his heart. Although he had used his future transformation and fused with his illusory future cultivation base, his physical body was still at the Yang birth realm. Compared to the Lord of the Extreme Devil's ultimate battle body, he was at a disadvantage in terms of physical body. Although his future transformation was terrifying and heaven-defying, it had a bottom line. If he continued to fight with the Lord of the Extreme Devil like this, the effects of his future transformation would gradually disappear, and he would be beaten back to his original state. Yi Xian, it looks like you can't hold on any longer. Today, I will consign you to eternal damnation. The Lord of the Extreme Devil saw Yi Xian's weakness with a single glance. He could also sense that Yi Xian's aura was extremely unstable. The demonic light around him had already reached its peak. It's not too late for you to retreat now, or you will become the first sovereign of eternity to die. At this moment, Yi Xian gradually calmed down. Although the aura around his body was still illusory and distorted, it gradually affected the world. It actually caused the chaotic universe to begin to tremble, as if something extremely bad was about to happen. Hiss! When Yi Xian finished speaking, the sovereigns watching the battle unconsciously sucked in a cold breath. Their hearts trembled violently. No one believed Yi Xian's words. That was because all the sovereigns present knew that they were immortal. Unless the chaotic universe was destroyed, they would still be revived no matter how great the calamity was. At most, they would just be in a weakened state. This was because all of them had once fused with the heavenly heart of chaos. Their bodies were closely linked to the chaotic universe. Even if the shadow of eternity had crushed them single-handedly and wanted to kill them, they could still be revived. But now, Yi Xian was saying that he could kill in Sovereign of Eternity. This was practically a joke. In the eyes of these sovereigns, it was simply inconceivable. However, no one laughed at this moment. Instead, all the sovereigns were frowning. This was because Yi Xian gave them an extremely terrifying feeling. It was a feeling that they had not felt since they had attained their Tao. Savoring this feeling carefully, the utmost powerful beings present were flabbergasted. To think that this was the smell of death. How long had it been? These sovereigns could no longer remember clearly. After attaining their Tao, they could no longer feel death. But now they were feeling it once more. At this moment, these sovereigns were absolutely certain that Yi Xian was not just talking about it. He might truly have some means that could kill in Sovereign of Eternity. Just as these sovereigns were in a state of shock, the Lord of the Extreme Demonic laughed maniacally. That voice of his that could kill through the ancient ages was even louder. With just you, the power of the Extreme Demonic was evolving to the extreme. He had already reached the critical point of being an utmost demonic. Furthermore, the Lord of the Extreme Demonic did not care about life or death. Yi Xian's words could not scare him at all. Extreme demonic chaos. The Lord of the Extreme Demonic hated Yi Xian to the core. Even if he had to die together with Yi Xian, he would not hesitate. This was the terror of the Tao of the Extreme Demonic. Rumble. The heavens trembled as the starry skies collapsed. The Lord of the Extreme Demonic released his most terrifying aura of an utmost demonic. This strike of his was all gathered within the Tongtian demon flag, bringing with it an utmost might that could annihilate all living things in the chaos. It slammed down towards Yi Xian. Sir! Yi Qingmei cried out worriedly. Her power of extreme emotions erupted. Clearly, she understood just how terrifying this strike of the Lord of the Extreme Demonic was. She was even more worried that Yi Xian would be buried under this strike. Bury the chaos and enter the cycle of reincarnation. The so-called sovereigns should also be buried in the yellow earth. Suddenly, without waiting for Yi Qingmei to step forward, Yi Xian murmured softly. But what happened next sent chills down the spines of all the sovereigns present. Chapter 1366. Reincarnation. Yi Xian's ancient voice rang out as the universe warped. His voice seemed to be the first voice to be heard when the chaotic universe was created. It was filled with loneliness and desolation, as well as a deep sense of helplessness. Eternal silence. The sound of reincarnation. The chaotic universe was too mysterious. Even forbidden characters couldn't comprehend it. Yi Xian's futuristic transformation had already touched upon an extremely mysterious realm. Wang. Eternal horror. Everything fell silent. Yi Xian's entire being turned into a light shadow. He actually began to rotate slowly. The starry universe began to distort and turn illusory. It was as if it was turning into a bubble, about to disappear completely. The gate of reincarnation? No. He's simulating the gate of reincarnation. How is this possible? How can he simulate such a terrifying thing? In an instant, the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Fate, and the Lord of Time and Space spoke out at the same time. At this moment, the technique that Yi Xian was using caused their souls to tremble in fear. Moreover, the cultivation within their bodies actually disappeared into thin air, and their souls seemed to be sucked into the door of light that Yi Xian had transformed into. What was the gate of reincarnation? It was a place that even the strongest of all eternity feared and wanted to go. The gate of reincarnation had always been sealed. No one had ever pushed it open, not even forbidden characters who surpassed the strongest of all eternity. No one knew what was behind the gate of reincarnation. However, they strongly believed that as long as they opened the gate of reincarnation, they would be able to break through the path of chaos and not die along with the chaos. But what were they seeing now? Yi Xian had actually simulated the most terrifying thing. Although it was only a simulation, the aura it contained was enough to make these strongest of all eternity tremble in fear. Wang. The gate of reincarnation did not stop. Everything melted away. The Lord of Extreme Devil's strongest attack turned into a bubble. His entire being was being pulled in by the gate of reincarnation. His body was completely out of his control. Wrath of Extreme Devil. At this moment, the Lord of the Extreme Fiend howled madly. He wasn't afraid of death, but he didn't want to die in such an embarrassing manner. Even if he had to self-destruct and die, he wanted to drag Yi Xian down with him. Unfortunately, in front of the gate of reincarnation that Yi Xian had created, his cultivation had completely disappeared. Not to mention wanting to self-destruct, even moving a single finger had become extremely difficult. The Lord of the Extreme Devil struggled madly. He constantly channeled his utmost strength, hoping to break free from these shackles. However, it was useless. His entire being was rapidly being pulled over. Death was a very terrifying thing. Unless one was completely disheartened, most people feared death. However, the Lord of the Extreme Devil wasn't afraid of death. What he hated was that he couldn't kill Yi Xian. In the end, he still lost to Yi Xian. The Lord of the Paramount Fiend howled in fury, but his eyes were filled with despair. He could already sense death. This was true death. If he was sucked into the gate of reincarnation, he would no longer exist in the chaos verse. Suddenly, just as the Lord of the Extreme Devil was about to be sucked into the gate of reincarnation, the door started to shake. With a dong sound, the gate of reincarnation disappeared with a loud bang, and Yi Xian appeared in the starry sky. Ugh! Yi Xian coughed up a mouthful of blood. His aura immediately withered, and his face was as pale as paper. The sound of heavy breathing could be heard from his mouth. Puff! On the other side, although the Lord of the Extreme Fiend had escaped death, he had been pulled over by the gate of reincarnation conjured by Yi Xian. He had lost all of his cultivation, and was affected by the aura of reincarnation. He too coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell down from the sky. I still failed, Yi Xian murmured weakly. Although he was the one who conjured the gate of reincarnation, he didn't understand its mysteries at all. He had merely been inspired by the art of future transfiguration. He had been so close to success, but in the end, he had failed because the gate of reincarnation was a taboo among taboos. It wasn't something he could control. However, although Yi Xian was somewhat disappointed, he quickly regained his senses. His art of future transfiguration was about to expire. He had to use the remaining time to kill the Lord of the Extreme Fiend once and for all. Die! Boom! The Heavenfall halberd shot over, and was instantly grasped by Yi Xian. Yi Xian took a step forward, and appeared in front of the Lord of the Extreme Fiend in an instant. Terrifying killing intent erupted from Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's motto had always been to take the enemy's life, while the enemy was sick. Now that the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's cultivation had been reduced by the gate of reincarnation, this was the best opportunity to kill him. Yi Xian absolutely wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Swish! The halberd soared through the sky and pierced through the universe. In Yi Xian's hands, it displayed boundless might. The terrifying, chilling tip of the halberd radiated an unprecedented killing intent. Yi Xian's heaven's burial art frantically activated, pouring all of its power into the halberd. Die! Yi Xian thrust his halberd at the Lord of the Extreme Fiend, erupting with an ancient killing intent. It instantly pierced through the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's chest, causing blood to flow uncontrollably from his mouth. Arg! The Lord of the Extreme Fiend roared furiously, but he couldn't use any of his cultivation. His entire body was pierced through by the Heavenfall halberd. He couldn't resist at all. It had to be said that the strongest of all time was the strongest of all time. Even though the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's body had been pierced through by Yi Xian's Heavenfall halberd, he was still alive. His vitality was terrifyingly tenacious. Of course, although the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's cultivation had disappeared, his supreme battle constitution wasn't affected. This was also the reason why he was still alive. Rumble! Yi Xian swung the Heavenfall halberd with a single arm. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend's blood stained the starry sky. His body had been pierced through by the Heavenfall halberd, and his entire body moved along with Yi Xian. I'll send you on your way. Yi Xian roared coldly. His eyes shone with a bloody light. To be able to personally kill a strongest of all time was something he didn't dare to imagine. It was also something that made him extremely excited. Boom! The starry sky erupted and the primal chaos trembled. His art of future transfiguration was about to disappear. Yi Xian could already feel his state beginning to fade. He had to kill the Lord of the Extreme Fiend in this final moment. Swish! The halberd swept through the sky, staining the starry sky with blood. Yi Xian thrust forward with the Heavenfall halberd in hand. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend's entire body hung on the halberd. The two and the halberd were like a dazzling meteor, falling towards the other end of the starry sky. Bang! The halberd destroyed heaven and earth. With a deafening boom, the Lord of the Extreme Fiend was impaled alive by Yi Xian's Heavenfall halberd on a vast and withered star. Wah! Blood gushed out and the earth melted. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend spat out a mouthful of blood. This blood contained a terrifying might that caused the earth around him to collapse. Swish! Yi Xian pulled the Heavenfall halberd out of the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's chest. Blood spurted out, instantly soaking Yi Xian's entire body. Chapter 1367. Weng. It had to be said that the Supreme Devil Lord's blood was too powerful. Yi Xian's body flickered, as he was drenched by the Supreme Devil Lord's blood. He was actually absorbing the energy within the Supreme Devil Lord's blood to transform his body. Chi! Chi! The other Supreme Devils arrived in an instant. When they saw Yi Xian covered in blood, and the Supreme Devil Lord lying in a pool of his own blood, their faces darkened, and their hearts trembled. As the saying went, without the lips, the teeth would feel cold. The Supreme Devil Lord had met such a tragic end. If they had been in his place, would they have ended up in the same state? There was indeed a difference between the strongest and the weakest, but the difference was definitely not too great. The Lord of the Extreme Devil was in the middle of the strongest, but even he had ended up like this. If Yi Xian continued to grow, perhaps some of them would also end up in such a miserable state in the future. Come kill me. The Lord of the Extreme Devil's entire body was bathed in blood, and a large hole had been opened in his chest. At this moment, he couldn't recover from the loss of his cultivation. However, his eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Yi Xian. There was only madness in his eyes, and he didn't care about his own life at all. You're really stubborn, huh? Bang! Yi Xian fiercely stomped his foot on the Lord of the Extreme Devil's face. His wide foot fiercely crushed the Lord of the Extreme Devil, because he was absolutely not a benevolent person, nor would he be moved by the Lord of the Extreme Devil's infatuation with Yi Qingmei. Yi Xian only believed in one sentence. If anyone wanted to kill him, then he would be his enemy, and becoming his enemy would only lead to death. Killing people and trampling on their dignity was not Yi Xian's hobby, but it was Yi Xian's method. Aren't you a supreme devil lord? Didn't you want to kill me? Now that Lao Tzu is stepping on you, I want to see how you will kill me. Crack! Yi Xian's expression was ferocious and sinister. His feet exploded with an enormous force that seemed like the heavens. His feet ruthlessly crushed the face of the Lord of the Extreme Devil, causing the bones of the Lord of the Extreme Devil's face to continuously emit strange sounds. Yi Xian, I'm going to kill you, ah! The Lord of the Extreme Fiend wasn't afraid of death, but he couldn't accept this sort of humiliation. At this moment, he was being crushed beneath Yi Xian's feet. This was a fate worse than death. I admire people who aren't afraid of death. I also know that you aren't afraid of death. However, although death is scary, there is something even scarier: shame. You will also become the biggest joke among the strongest. And this is the price you have to pay for going against me, Yi Xian said calmly. However, every word of his was a stab to the heart, causing the Lord of the Extreme Devil to howl in rage. Look at how lowly you are, Yi Xian murmured. You're as lowly as a dog. There's no need for you to bark like that. Perhaps you think that being one of the most powerful existences of all time is something to be proud of. But in the eyes of the entire Chaos Verse, you really are nothing more than a dog. His words seemed to be mocking and humiliating the Lord of the Extreme Fiend, but they were actually his true thoughts. The Chaos Verse was a mysterious and boundless place. The most powerful existences of all time were revered and worshipped by all living beings. However, in the eyes of the entire Chaos Verse, they were nothing more than slightly stronger ants. They really weren't even comparable to a dog. Yi Xian, kill me if you can. The Lord of the Extreme Fiend howled again and again. Yi Xian's torment and humiliation had left him utterly humiliated and enraged. Whether or not he survived today, he would become the greatest joke of the Chaos Verse. He was one of the most powerful existences of all time. Yet he was being crushed beneath the feet of someone who hadn't even reached the Tao. This was nothing short of a fantasy. It was something that had never happened before in the history of the Chaos Verse. All right, I've played with you enough. You can die now. Yi Xian murmured darkly. He could already sense that his future incarnation was beginning to disperse. It was time for him to send the Lord of the Extreme Fiend on his way. Boom! Yi Xian raised the Heavenfall halberd, the tip of the halberd glowing with light. It was already aimed at the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's forehead, about to deliver a fatal blow. However, there was nothing absolute in the world. At this moment, the Lord of the Extreme Devil had lost his cultivation. As long as Yi Xian pierced through his forehead and crushed his soul, he would be able to take his life. Su Baining, rest in peace. If you have a next life, do not make an enemy out of me. Rip. Yi Xian's halberd came crashing down. If this strike pierced through Su Baining's forehead and crushed his soul, the Lord of the Extreme Fiend would cease to exist in the primordial chaos. Sir, please wait. Suddenly, at this critical moment, Yi Qingmei instantly appeared beside Yi Xian. Her face that could overturn all living things was slightly pale, and her eyes carried a hint of pleading as she looked at Yi Xian. You want to save him? What kind of person was Yi Xian? He could tell what Yi Qingmei was thinking with a single glance, causing him to slightly frown. Sir, he protected me all those years ago, and even became a demon because of me. Please let him live. Yi Qingmei bit her lip. Qingmei. Tears of blood flowed from the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's eyes. He stared blankly at Yi Qingmei's back, his demonic gaze gradually fading away. Sir, I beg you. At this moment, Yi Qingmei no longer had the might of the Extreme Fiend. She seemed to have turned into a young girl of the past, pleading with the person she admired. The primordial chaos is a universe of blood and mountains of corpses. I've been able to make it this far because I've never shown any mercy. All my enemies must die. If I had the slightest bit of mercy, I would have been reduced to a pile of bones long ago. How could I have lived to this day? Yi Xian said indifferently. He wanted to agree to Yi Qingmei's request, but Yi Xian was extremely calm. If he let the Lord of the Extreme Fiend live today, It wouldn't be long before the Lord of the Extreme Fiend came knocking on his door. At that time, Yi Xian would die tragically at the Lord of the Extreme Fiend's hands. Now that the heavenly heart of chaos had descended, it could conceal the mysteries of the heavens and allow him to use his ability to transform the future. That was why he had the chance to kill the Lord of the Extreme Fiend. If he missed this chance, he would definitely be the one to die. Being merciful to one's enemies was being cruel to oneself. Yi Xian would never let his enemies go because of personal feelings. Back then, the Moon Fairy was the same. The Empyrean Fairy was the same. Even Yi Qingmei was no exception. Yi Xian boasted that he didn't know Yi Qingmei anything, so he definitely wouldn't let the Lord of the Supreme Devil off just because of Yi Qingmei's pleas. As long as he was his enemy, the only path left for him was death. This was something that Yi Xian had believed in all along. Looking at Yi Xian's cold face, Yi Qingmei's eyes glazed over. She was all too familiar with Yi Xian's aura. Back then, he had been just as emotionless and indifferent. She vaguely remembered that Yi Xian had once taught her that if she wanted to reach the peak of the primal chaos, she had to give up on that pointless pity. A general's success was built on the bones of tens of thousands. A sea of blood paved the way, and a mountain of corpses. A successful person would have countless corpses piled up behind him. If he couldn't give up on that pitiful pity, he would eventually become nothing more than a pile of bones beneath someone else's feet. Back down. Yi Xian shouted coldly. He could return Yi Xian's favor and marry her, but his enemies had to die. If he didn't remove the roots, they would grow again when the spring breeze blew. Yi Xian definitely wouldn't leave any trouble for himself. Chapter 1368. Yi Xian had always been domineering, cold, and arbitrary. This was especially true in the face of such a major event. He would never change his mind. Die. Yi Xian no longer hesitated. His art of future incarnation was about to dissipate. He thrust his halberd at the Lord of the Extreme Devil's forehead, clearly intending to kill him. However, the Lord of the Extreme Devil showed no fear in the face of Yi Xian's sure-kill attack. Instead, his face turned extremely gloomy, because he believed he wouldn't die. Clang! A blade of nirvanic light blocked the Lord of the Extreme Devil, barely saving his life. At the same time, a sinister figure walked towards Yi Xian. Who else could it be but the Undying Heaven Lord? Yi Xian, are you treating me like thin air? The Undying Heaven Lord held his blade horizontally and unleashed the power of nirvanic destruction. He looked at Yi Xian with a sinister glint in his eyes. There was also great fear in his eyes. It wasn't that the Undying Heaven Lord felt pity for the Lord of the Extreme Devil, but that he knew what it meant to be interdependent. If Yi Xian really did kill the Extreme Devil, it would damage the dignity of the Extreme Devil. Moreover, he might end up following in the Extreme Devil's footsteps in the future. Of course, this wasn't the true reason why the Undying Heaven Lord had saved the Extreme Devil. It was because this concerned the secrets of the primordial chaos. Thus, the Extreme Devil couldn't die. It was common knowledge that there were 12 periods in the primordial chaos. Every period would give birth to an Extreme Devil. Together, they were the 12 Eternal Sovereigns. If one of the Eternal Sovereigns died, it would be extremely detrimental to the Undying Heaven Lord's plan. It wasn't just the Undying Heaven Lord. The other Extreme Devils all had the same thought. They all strode towards Yi Xian. Clearly, they wouldn't let Yi Xian kill the Extreme Devil. Do you know why I can't die? Bathed in blood, the Lord of the Extreme Devil crawled up from the ground with some difficulty. He then looked at Yi Xian mockingly and said, "The reason is simple. I am a paragon of the 9th period. I exist with the fortune of the chaos. If I die, one of the 12 paragons will be missing when the 12th period comes to an end. Perhaps you don't know this, but the 12 supreme beings represent the chaos of each Yuan Hui. Only when the 12 supreme beings work together will they have the chance to push open the gates of reincarnation. They can't afford to take this risk. Unless you can kill all the supreme beings, you won't be able to kill me." At this moment, the Lord of the Extreme Devil was mocking. However, the venomous look in his eyes was extremely thick. Even if he could survive today, his reputation as a supreme being would be completely destroyed. From now on, he would become the laughingstock of all living beings. None of the people I want to kill have been able to survive, Yi Xian muttered coldly, a strange and cruel smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. The Lord of the Extreme Devil's face changed. An extremely bad feeling rose up from the bottom of his heart, as an extremely terrifying sensation of death enveloped his mind. Not good, something's wrong. None of the supreme beings present were ordinary people. When they saw the strange smile on Yi Xian's face, their hearts trembled violently. In the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord stood in front of the Lord of the Extreme Devil. The Master of Primal Chaos and the others also sealed off the area, guarding against Yi Xian's trump card. It's too late. I already knew that you supreme beings were going to interfere. Did you think I wasn't prepared? Yi Xian roared. Everything was going according to his plan. Although he wanted to kill the Lord of the Extreme Devil, how could he not be wary of these supreme beings who were watching the battle? Yi Xian had never been a careless person. He knew very well how difficult it was to kill a supreme being. Therefore, from the beginning until now, he had only been putting on an act. The real killing move was also reserved for this moment. A terrifying thing happened. Chi! Suddenly, the heaven-destroying halberd disappeared. A flash of reincarnation light flickered. In the next moment, no one could see clearly that the body of the Lord of the Extreme Devil had been cut into two by the heaven-destroying halberd. Bang! The two halves of the corpse fell into a pool of blood, completely cut open from head to toe. That flash of reincarnation light disappeared as if it had never appeared. How is this possible? This scene caused all the supreme beings to cry out in shock. They had already been on guard against Yi Xian's vicious attack, but they did not expect such a result. Get out of my way! While everyone was still in shock, Yi Xian underwent a terrifying transformation. An obscure aura erupted. The aura of his art of future transformation, that was about to dissipate, suddenly increased. His entire person gave off an unimaginably sharp feeling. Attack! The 8 Forbidden Arts, terrifying amplification. This was the forbidden art that Eternal Shadow had imparted to Yi Xian. Although it could not be compared to his art of future transformation, it could still be considered the third most powerful offensive art of all time. Coupled with Yi Xian's Tribulation Transcender transformation, the two combined into one. In an instant, Yi Xian's combat strength increased to an unimaginable level. He directly surpassed the supreme beings of all time, and stepped into the legendary Forbidden Realm. This was Yi Xian's true trump card. It was also the killing move that he had been preparing for a long time. He had been waiting for this moment, because no one could stop him from killing the people he wanted to kill. Rumble! Bury the heavens and destroy the earth, not allowing chaos. When Yi Xian used the attack symbol technique and the Tribulation Transcender transformation, he instantly stepped into the Forbidden Realm. At this moment, the aura he exuded was enough to shatter one's soul. Go to hell! Yi Xian took a step forward, causing the stars and universe to explode. Even the illusory heavenly heart of chaos that descended began to show signs of dissipating. His entire being seemed to have turned into the eternal blue sky, as he rushed towards the Lord of the Extreme Devil, with a violent killing intent. Although the Lord of the Extreme Devil had been cleaved in two, he was still one of the strongest existences of all time. To truly kill him, one would have to grind his bones to dust and nail his soul to death. Only then would one truly be able to kill him. Yi Xian had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. He had been waiting for this moment. His art of future transformation, the attack symbol technique, and the Tribulation Transcender transformation all erupted, directly pushing Yi Xian into the Forbidden Realm. However, when Yi Xian stepped into the Forbidden Realm, Yi Xian finally felt a kind of pressure. He also understood why Aeon Shadow wanted to hide in the Chaos world. At this moment, the entire Chaos verse was trembling. It was as if a pair of eyes had opened in the unseen world, giving him a tremendous amount of pressure. Yi Xian was absolutely certain that he only had an incense stick's worth of time at most. If he didn't kill the Extreme Devil after that, the Chaos verse would send down Chaos heavenly punishment. At that time, he would also suffer the same fate as Aeon Shadow. Aeon Shadow was able to survive because he was strong to begin with. But now, Yi Xian was only borrowing the power of the three great forbidden techniques. If Chaos Heavenly Punishment really came down, he would definitely die without a burial ground. Moreover, Aeon Shadow had once told him that although the attack symbol technique was known as the third greatest killing technique of all time, it wasn't tolerated by the Chaos world. Moreover, it would absorb a great deal of the user's essence. If he didn't use it well, he would turn into a dried corpse and die. Therefore, he had to end this battle quickly. Chapter 1369. Stop him. The Undying Heaven Lord instantly woke up, and the Undying Heaven blade slashed towards Yi Xian. This was because the two halves of the Lord of the Extreme Devil's body were gradually converging behind him. It was obvious that they wanted to merge into one. Scram! With a flip of his palm, Yi Xian could be said to have reached the pinnacle. His 5 fingers were like a giant hammer as they slammed down at the Undying Heaven Lord. Clang! What Undying Heaven Lord? What eternal strongest? This palm was like the eternal firmament, as it sent the weapon in the Undying Heaven Lord's hand flying. Then, it slammed down at the Undying Heaven Lord without any decrease in power. Bang! Wah! The Undying Heaven Lord was instantly sent flying by Yi Xian's attack. His body was like a falling meteor, smashing countless stars into pieces. A mouthful of blood sprayed out from his mouth. How terrifying was a forbidden attack! Back then, Eternal Shadow had single-handedly crushed the 10 strongest and 9 great star masters. Although Yi Xian wasn't as terrifying as Eternal Shadow, he wasn't someone the Undying Heaven Lord could deal with now that he had stepped into the forbidden state. Chaos. Destiny. In the next moment, the two strongest joined forces, as the two strongest powers of chaos and destiny burst forth. That terrifying might poured down on Yi Xian, like an endless sea of stars. Those who block my path shall die. Yi Xian went completely crazy, because he didn't have the time to tangle with these strongest. He had to kill the Lord of the Extreme Devil within an instance's time. Otherwise, all his efforts would be for naught. Bang! Bang! Fist lights pierced through the universe as his feet stepped into the starry skies. At this moment, Yi Xian was in a frenzy. As his fist swung, the entire chaotic universe trembled. Rumble! The two supreme powers were shattered by him, and he charged forward in a dominating manner. His palms formed the power of chaos, and a miniature chaos verse appeared, which he slammed toward the Lord of Chaos and the Master of Fate. Bang! The two strongest instantly retaliated. Unfortunately, Yi Xian had been preparing for this moment from the start. How could the two strongest defend against his sudden attack? Bang! The most powerful attacks unleashed by the Lord of Chaos and the Lord of Fate were instantly disintegrated. The miniature chaotic universe created by Yi Xian, which contained the power of eternity, sent the two of them flying hundreds of millions of miles away. No one could stop him, no one could rival him. No matter how weak Yi Xian was in the past, he was invincible at this moment. Even the fate of chaos could not stop him from advancing. Wanling dispersed the heavenly heart of chaos. His current cultivation is related to the descent of the heavenly heart of chaos. Suddenly, the roar of the Master of Chaos came from all directions. Clearly, he had seen through Yi Xian's state. As long as the heavenly heart of chaos was dispelled, Yi Xian would be beaten back to his original state. At this moment, the Lord of all Spirits' face was as gloomy as water. Although he had made a deal with Yi Xian, the current Yi Xian was far too terrifying. If he stepped forward to fight, he would definitely be no match for him. He understood what the Master of Primal Chaos meant. This was because he had achieved the Tao during the 10th Aeon, and he was also the one who had achieved the Tao in the current era. He was one with the heavenly heart of primal chaos, and only he could dispel it. Myriad Spirit Realm. The Lord of all Spirits activated the Myriad Spirit Immortal scripture with a rumble. Myriad Spirit Divine Light permeated the air, and a mysterious aura erupted as well. The descending heavenly heart of primal chaos actually showed signs of dispersing. The Lord of all spirits was the only one who had achieved the Tao in the current era, and he was the only one who could beat Yi Xian back to his original state. Go to hell. Boom. Yi Xian couldn't stop the Lord of all spirits, but he wanted to kill the Lord of the Extreme Devil at the last moment. His entire body instantly appeared in front of the Lord of the Extreme Devil, and at this moment, the Lord of the Extreme Devil's body had already recovered. However, his aura was extremely weak as he fiercely glared at Yi Xian. You're too arrogant. Rumble. The Lord of Destruction finally made his move, but before he could reach Yi Xian punched him. This punch contained the power of a forbidden attack, causing the Lord of Destruction's expression to change greatly. He didn't dare to meet this attack head-on. He only wanted to stop Yi Xian, and he had no intention of fighting to the death with Yi Xian. Boom. The starry sky was pierced through, and hundreds of millions of kilometers turned into a vacuum. Although the Lord of Destruction dodged this attack, it also gave Yi Xian a chance to kill the Lord of Paramount Fiend. Stop him. The Lord of Primal Chaos quickly returned, but it was too late. At this moment, only the Lord of Human Tao, the Lord of Extreme Emotion, and the Lord of Spacetime were present. Unfortunately, the four of them had different expressions, and each of them had their own reasons for not making a move. The Lord of Heaven Devouring was a bloodthirsty person, and whether or not the Lord of Paramount Fiend died had nothing to do with him. Moreover, he had already obtained the Calamity Transcender technique, and he wanted to take advantage of the fact that Yi Xian had killed the Lord of Paramount Fiend to devour his cultivation and step into the Forbidden Realm in one fell swoop. How could he possibly stop Yi Xian? The Lord of Human Tao frowned. Although she was a woman, she had created the power of karma and believed in karma. If she tried to stop Yi Xian, she would inevitably bear the consequences of her actions. This was also the reason why she hadn't made a move yet. As for the Lord of Spacetime and Yi Xian, there was no need to mention them. The Lord of Spacetime had an extremely deep relationship with Yi Xian, and Yi Qingmei was no weak woman. If she had to choose between Yi Xian and the Lord of Paramount Fiend, she could only choose Yi Xian and give up on the Lord of Paramount Fiend. At this moment, Yi Xian was unstoppable. Under the Lord of the Extreme Devil's resentful and unwilling gaze, Yi Xian picked up the heaven-slaying halberd and pierced it towards the center of the Lord of the Extreme Devil's forehead with a ferocious killing intent. Clang! The primal chaos trembled and everything fell silent. The cold tip of the halberd instantly pierced through the Lord of Paramount Fiend's forehead, ruthlessly nailing him to death in space. However, Yi Xian still wasn't at ease. He violently pulled out the heaven-punishing halberd and slashed at the Lord of Paramount Fiend once more. This time, he used all of his cultivation and raised the attack character formula and the Tribulation Transcender transformation to the absolute peak. He was determined to kill the Lord of Paramount Fiend right here and now. Chi. The halberd wreaked havoc in the heavens, slaughtering everything in its path. Countless halberd lights landed on the Lord of Paramount Fiend's body, completely grinding him to pieces in space. Not even a drop of blood was left behind. Silence. Silence. A deathly silence. When Yi Xian finished doing all this, all of the supreme experts were deathly silent. They couldn't believe their eyes, because this was the first time they'd seen with their own eyes that even the strongest of all time could die. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the next moment, the primal chaos trembled, and the heavenly melody of the great Tao rang out, as if it were crying. A wisp of mysterious chi rose from where the Lord of Paramount Fiend had disappeared, instantly shooting into the depths of the primal chaos. The ninth epic's heavenly heart of chaos? The undying heaven lord returned with a bang, directly abandoning Yi Xian and slashing at the mysterious chi with his blade. However, he couldn't stop it in the slightest. He could only watch as the mysterious chi disappeared into the depths of the universe. Boom! It was also at this moment that the Lord of all spirits dispersed the descending heavenly heart of chaos, and Yi Xian's otherworldly future also retreated. Wah! Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura instantly weakened to the extreme, and the most terrifying thing was that his body was shriveling up. This was a hidden danger brought about by the attack character formula. The Eternal Shadow had once said that unless it was a matter of life and death, the attack character formula should never be used. Otherwise, this forbidden technique would suck Yi Xian dry and truly leave him without a proper burial ground. Now that his otherworldly future had dissipated, the backlash from the attack character formula began to appear. If this continued, Yi Xian himself would be reduced to ashes, no longer existing in the primal chaos, before the supreme experts of all time could do anything. Chapter 1370. Puffed. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. His body became thinner and thinner, and he began to lose his balance. In the next moment, he fell like a kite with its string cut. This was Yi Xian's greatest crisis. Not a drop of his cultivation remained. His flesh and blood were melting rapidly. Even his soul began to dim. This was a sign that he was about to turn into ashes. If this was not stopped, Yi Xian would die without a doubt. Sir. Fortunately, Yi Qingmei instantly woke up and appeared beside him, directly taking him into her arms. However, the current Yi Xian was extremely dangerous. His flesh and blood were melting inch by inch, and the bones beneath his flesh and blood could already be faintly seen. It was obvious that this battle had consumed too much of Yi Xian's energy. It had already touched his foundation, and would take his life. Freeze! Yi Qingmei was, after all, a supreme expert. After the initial panic, she calmed down in an instant. The power of extreme emotion poured into Yi Xian's body, trying to stabilize his injuries. Unfortunately, Yi Qingmei was disappointed. Although her power of extreme emotion was terrifying, it had no effect on Yi Xian's current state. The moment it entered Yi Xian's body, it disappeared without a trace. How can this be? Yi Qingmei's face was pale. She did not expect Yi Xian to suffer such serious injuries. Even she could not save him. Sir, wake up! Yi Qingmei shook Yi Xian's unconscious body. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not react at all because his flame of life was about to be extinguished. Rumble! Suddenly, the starry sky trembled as an extremely powerful pressure descended. The undying Heaven Lord had already walked back. At this moment, his eyes were maliciously staring at Yi Xian, who was in Yi Qingmei's embrace. A trace of hidden fear flashed through his eyes. Extreme emotion, leave him to me. The undying Heaven Lord's voice was like a 10,000-year-old river. He walked step by step towards Yi Xian. Clearly, he would not let go of this opportunity to control Yi Xian. This person is too unpredictable. We can't let him live. The Master of Chaos and the Master of Fate spoke at the same time. They looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Yi Xian was merely at the Yang Birth realm, yet he was able to kill an ultimate being, just because he had used a great taboo technique. This had already overturned their understanding of the world. Yi Xian had yet to attain the Tao, but he was already so terrifying. If Yi Xian attained the Tao in the next yuan, who would be able to stop him? If he could kill the Supreme Devil today, then when he achieves the Tao in the future, wouldn't killing them be as easy as slaughtering pigs? Moreover, this was only one of the problems. The most important problem was that Yi Xian had too many secrets on him. If they couldn't suppress him today, what would they use to keep Yi Xian in check in the future? The ultimate being of the eternal era was still a human. Every human had their own selfish motives. If they didn't capture Yi Xian today, while he was in a weakened state, they wouldn't know how long they would have to wait if they missed this opportunity. Even if they took 10,000 steps back, even if they couldn't suppress Yi Xian today, they had to kill him in this part of the universe. They definitely couldn't let him leave this place alive. After all, the ultimate beings present could already feel the threat. The Supreme Devil Lord was the best example. No one wanted to follow in his footsteps. What are you guys trying to do? At this moment, Yi Qingmei was filled with killing intent. A sharp glint flashed across her eyes. Yi Xian was in a life and death situation right now. Now that these ultimate beings were closing in, Yi Qingmei's heart was heavy. Extreme emotion. He has already killed the Supreme Devil. This is a threat to us ultimate beings. Hand him over to me. Only then can we get rid of this threat completely. If you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for being merciless. The undying Heaven Lord said coldly. With just you. Yi Qingmei sneered. The power of extreme emotion exploded. She definitely wouldn't let Yi Xian die. Even if she had to use all of her ultimate being's cultivation today, she wouldn't hesitate. Extreme emotion. There's a big problem with this person. Hand him over. The Master of Chaos frowned. He had already expressed his stance. The other ultimate beings nodded as well. They each took a step forward and surrounded the Master of Extreme Emotion. Qingmei. Suddenly, a voice as soft as a mosquito's rang out. This caused Yi Qingmei's expression to change. She hurriedly looked over at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was struggling to open his eyes. However, his flesh and blood had already withered to the extreme. It was terrifying, as if he was just skin and bones. Sir, don't worry. If anyone dares to touch you, Qingmei will not hesitate, even if I have to die together with them. Yi Qingmei said sternly. You're no match for them. Retreat. Retreat. Yi Xian relied on his tenacious willpower to stabilize himself. Although his eyes were withered and lifeless, they still had an unyielding expression. Even though his appearance was like a skeleton, his spine was still straight and straight. Devouring sky, all spirits, are you not going to fulfill your promise? At this moment, Yi Xian didn't have the strength to fight at all. He could only escape this disaster by coveting these two ultimate beings. When he said this, the expressions of the Devouring Sky Demon Lord and the Master of all spirits changed slightly. A trace of hesitation flashed through their eyes. Once upon a time, the Master of all spirits' wish was to fight Yi Xian and truly wash away the humiliation from all those years ago. However, the terror that Yi Xian displayed today began to cause the Master of all spirits to lose some of his confidence. The Master of all spirits knew that he wasn't much stronger than the Lord of the Extreme Devil. If the current Yi Xian was already so terrifying, then when Yi Xian reached the Tao in the future, would he still be a match for Yi Xian? The Devouring Sky Demon Lord also frowned slightly. He originally thought that with the Tribulation Transcender technique, he would be able to step into the Forbidden Realm in the future and truly surpass the ultimate beings of all ages. However, the things that Yi Xian displayed today made him feel extreme fear in his heart. Fortunately, although the two ultimate beings each had their own thoughts, ultimate beings were still ultimate beings. They naturally had to fulfill their promises. Boom! Boom! The Devouring Sky Demon Lord and the Master of all spirits took a step forward at the same time and instantly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Then, they calmly looked at the Undying God Lord and the others. He can't die. The two spoke at the same time. Although they didn't reveal any aura, their words were powerful and resonant. It was obvious that they wouldn't allow the Master of Chaos and the others to harm Yi Xian. Ultimate beings were people who kept their promises. It was impossible for them to break their own promises. If the two of them went back on their promise to Yi Xian, their mental states as ultimate beings would be damaged. This was not an outcome that they wanted to see. Are the two of you crazy? You actually want to protect him? The Undying God Lord was stunned and puzzled. Then he angrily roared. He didn't expect that the Devouring Sky Demon Lord and the Master of all spirits would betray him at such a critical moment. If it were other ultimate beings, it would be fine. However, these two ultimate beings had taken action. Even the Master of Chaos began to frown. As for the Master of Destiny, his eyes flashed with a ruthless light. The Devouring Sky Demon Lord's heaven-devouring demonic art was extremely domineering. He was definitely ranked in the top 5 of the 10 ultimate beings, and should be on par with the Undying God Lord. Chapter 1371. The Lord of all spirits was the last to achieve the Tao. Logically speaking, he should be the weakest of the 10, but he was the one who had achieved the Tao. He was the ruler of the chaos verse of the 10th Eon, and in the 10th Eon, he was supported by the edicts of chaos. At this moment, the two of them were working together to protect Yi Xian. With the addition of the Madwoman Lord of Extreme Love, The other supreme experts found this extremely troublesome. Yi Xian and I are fated. Please don't make things difficult for him. Suddenly, the Lord of Time and Space slowly walked over. He also stood in front of Yi Xian, and his attitude caused the expressions of the undying Heaven Lord and the others to turn extremely gloomy. The four supreme experts stood out at the same time. On the other hand, there were only 5 on the undying Heaven Lord's side. Needless to say, the Lord of Primal Chaos and the Lord of Fate had clearly expressed their stance. The Lord of Destruction had just stopped Yi Xian and was obviously on their side. Only the Lord of Human Dao's attitude was ambiguous. No one knew what she meant. Human Dao, this person is extremely dangerous. Only by killing him can we get rid of future troubles. The undying Heaven Lord looked at the Lord of Human Dao. Today's karma will be repaid in the future. Yi Xian and I have a karma to settle. Although I won't help him, I won't make things difficult for him either. The Lord of Human Dao walked away slowly. However, before he left, he took a deep look at Yi Xian before he turned into a ray of light and disappeared. Among the 10 supreme experts, the Lord of Human Dao was the one who kept the lowest profile. Although the power of karma wasn't well known, the other supreme experts didn't dare to underestimate her. Damn it! After the Lord of Human Dao left, the situation was in a deadlock. Both sides were the 4 supreme experts. If one really had to differentiate who was stronger, the Lord of Primal Chaos was obviously stronger. After all, the Lord of Primal Chaos and the Lord of Fate were ranked first and second in the Chaos verse. There was also the Lord of Undying who was ranked 4th. This lineup was definitely the strongest. However, Yi Xian's side wasn't weak either. The Lord of Sky Devouring could stop the Lord of Undying. The Lord of Spacetime could stop the Lord of Fate. And the Lord of All Spirits was a supreme expert of the current era. He could definitely hold the Lord of Primal Chaos back. The Lord of Destruction was the only one left. The Lord of Extreme Love could naturally stop him as well. The 2 sides were evenly matched. If they really wanted to fight for Yi Xian, without a battle to the death, the outcome. Time and time, you're too foolish. The Master of Chaos frowned, and looked at the Master of Time and Space with disappointment. Chaos, Destiny, Space, and Time. These 3 laws maintain the basic operations of the Chaos verse, and they ran through the Chaos verse for 12 periods. Today, for the sake of Yi Xian, he was actually on the opposite side. This was unacceptable to the Lord of Chaos, and it made him extremely disappointed in the Lord of Time and Space. Brother Primal Chaos, I once received his favor, and I believe that he is the key to breaking the path of chaos. I hope you won't force me to take action, the Space-Time Master said in a low voice. This person is too strange. We can't let him live today. If you insist on protecting him, we brothers can only turn against each other. The Lord of Primal Chaos seemed calm, but he knew too many secrets of the Primal Chaos. Yi Xian's performance today worried him too much. If he couldn't control him, then the only way was to kill him. Only then would he be able to guard against him. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Just kill him. The Undying Heaven Lord roared. The Undying Heaven blade appeared with a flip of his hand. He slashed out millions of miles of blade light. It was as if the stars and the universe were about to be cut in half by his blade. Fate. The Lord of Fate was even simpler. He directly used the great art of fate. The stars within millions of miles began to distort. The power of fate that controlled all life whizzed toward Yi Xian. Suppress. With the 2 supreme experts attacking, the Lord of Primal Chaos no longer hesitated. No matter what, he couldn't let Yi Xian live today. The power of Primal Chaos brewed, and directly suppressed the Lord of Spacetime. Rumble. In the next moment, the entire Primal Chaos began to riot. The Lord of Spacetime also attacked. The other 3 supreme experts also used their own supreme techniques. The 8 supreme experts actually fought against each other in an instant. Bang! 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 Great technique conquering the heavens, dominating the starry sky. The power displayed in the battle between the 8 supreme experts was too terrifying. The supreme power of destruction surged in the starry sky. Countless stars were turned into ashes, and the galloping Milky Way was also collapsing. At this moment, Yi Xian's body withered. Blood flowed out of the corners of his mouth. His body that was only skin and bones continued to wither. His skin began to crack inch by inch, revealing the pale white bones inside. Run! Without any hesitation or shame, Yi Xian only had one word in his mind at this moment, and that was to run. His current state was extremely unstable. If he used the great art of fate, he would exhaust himself. Moreover, with the addition of the attack symbol formula and the tribulation transcender transformation, his flame of life was fading. At this moment, whether it was his flesh, blood, essence, soul, or primordial spirit, they were all crazily suffering from the backlash. Even the extreme love master couldn't stabilize his injuries just now. He had to leave this place immediately and find a way to deal with his current state of backlash. Otherwise, before the Lord of Primal Chaos and the others could kill him, his soul would dissipate and he would die. Qi. Although Yi Xian's cultivation had been depleted, his body could still be used. He directly fell toward the 5 regions of chaos below. Stop him. Although the 8 supreme experts were crazily attacking, the undying Heaven Lord and the others were still staring at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. How could they allow that? Die! The undying Heaven Lord repelled the heaven-devouring demon master with a saber strike. The undying heaven saber slashed down at Yi Xian. The saber light that could split heaven and earth was too terrifying. It carried with it an ancient killing intent as it attacked Yi Xian. How dare you! Yi Qingmei had been paying attention to Yi Xian. He repelled the Lord of Destruction and slapped out with the power of extreme love, instantly blocking in front of Yi Xian. Bang! The saber light of Nirvana was too terrifying. The power of Nirvana was even more ferocious. With a chaotic explosion, the 2 supreme powers cancelled each other out. However, at this moment, Yi Xian was already in an extremely weak state. He couldn't withstand even the slightest attack. After all, his true cultivation was only at the Yangxing realm. At this moment, he was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Just the aftermath alone had caused his body to crack to the extreme. His flesh and blood dissipated with a loud bang. Only his pale white bones were falling toward the chaotic world below. Sir! Yi Qingmei's face was filled with anxiety. She suddenly chased after Yi Xian. Yi Xian's life was most likely in danger after being hit by the aftermath. You can't leave. The Lord of Destruction blocked Yi Qingmei's path. A great spell of destruction blasted out fiercely, instantly stopping Yi Qingmei. Ha ha ha. The undead Heaven Lord laughed wildly and said, "He's dead." He was already hit by the backlash of the forbidden technique. Now that he's been hit by my Nirvana attack, even if he can escape today, his soul will definitely be destroyed and scattered in the chaos. Kill. The situation instantly reversed. At this moment, it was no longer the Lord of Time and Space who was stopping the undead Heaven Lord and the others. Instead, it was the undead Heaven Lord who was stopping the Lord of Time and Space from saving Yi Xian. Although the saber he had just stepped out did not hit Yi Xian directly, the aftermath was not something Yi Xian could withstand. Moreover, under the backlash of the taboo technique, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to survive. If he could survive, that would be the biggest joke in the world. Damn it! The Lord of Time and Space was finally enraged. The power of time roared out, and the long river of time was channeled by him. Obviously he was really angry. Rumble. The 8 supreme experts were fighting in the chaos, and the entire chaotic universe was in turmoil. At this moment, no one could get away to chase after Yi Xian. They could only watch as Yi Xian turned into white bones and fell into the chaotic world. However, the 8 supreme experts knew very well that Yi Xian's chances of survival were too slim. Unless there was a forbidden character to save Yi Xian, there was no way he could survive. Chapter 1372. Thousands of years had passed, and the past had become smoke. Tens of millions of years seemed to be a long time, but it was only a very short period of time for the entire chaotic universe. However, during these tens of millions of years, countless famous supreme seeds had appeared in the chaotic world, setting off waves in the entire chaotic world. 5 regions of chaos. Bachan star field. The chaotic world was divided into 5 star fields. Needless to say, the central region was the center of the chaotic world, and the east, south, west, and north regions surrounded the central region. Bachan star field was a bitterly cold place among the 5 regions. It was in cold wind and snow all year round. Even the sun in the starry sky could not change the bitterly cold environment of Bachan star field. Although Bachan star field was bitterly cold, the practitioners there were very fierce and ruthless. Due to the lack of cultivation resources in Bachan star field, in order to survive, all kinds of bloody things happened from time to time. Human life was the most worthless thing in Bachan star field. In order to obtain limited cultivation resources, the entire Bachan star field could be said to be extremely chaotic. All kinds of dirty means were used, and killing was the most direct thing. This also led to the tradition of valiance in Bachan star field. Whether it was mountains, rivers, or glaciers, as long as there were living creatures, they would form a certain force. They would gather together for warmth, hunt ominous beasts for food, and barter these ominous beasts for their own needs. After the 10 great yuans, the practitioners of Bachan star field fought day and night with ominous beasts. Whether it was their wisdom, cultivation methods, or secret skills, they had all reached the peak. This was also something that other regions could not compare with. Perhaps the practitioners of Bachan star field were not the strongest, but in terms of killing means, they were definitely the best. Therefore, the entire Bachan star field was barren. Anyone who could walk out of Bachan star field was definitely regarded as a powerful figure, and could even become an overlord. The cold wind whistled, and the north wind was biting cold. The sky was full of flying snow, and the endless glaciers made people unable to see the end at a glance. This was a desolate land of danger. It was also a land of millions of miles of floating ice. The ice on the ground looked thick and heavy, but it was actually just a facade. If one was careless and stepped on the thin ice, they would be swallowed by the water of the ice sea. In such a harsh environment, there were actually 2 figures walking on the glacial ground. In this snowy scene, it was somewhat inconceivable. "Uncle, does the extreme mean ice fox really live here?" He saw a young man wearing a beast-skin cotton-padded jacket. Waves of heat were emitted from his body to resist the cold wind. Beside the youth, there was a middle-aged man wearing a robe. However, his robe was also made from the fur of a fierce beast. It was obvious that the cultivation of this uncle and nephew was not high. Otherwise, they would not be wearing such heavy robes. In the North Star field, everyone practiced cultivation. From the way they dressed, one could roughly tell their cultivation level. The stronger they were, the more they didn't fear the bitter cold. As for the weaker ones, they needed the fur of vicious beasts to keep themselves warm. After all, although the chaotic world was a holy place for cultivation, not everyone was a cultivator. There were also a large number of mortals. The wizards in the family have already calculated that the extreme ice fox is in this dangerous glacial ground. As long as we catch this beast, there is hope for your mother's cold blood disease to be cured, the middle-aged man said in a low voice. However, if one listened carefully, they would find that his words were slightly heavy, and a bleak aura was faintly blooming around him. Hearing his uncle's words, the youth nodded solemnly. A fierce look flashed in his eyes, and there was a persistence that ordinary people didn't have. A flash of light, and a gust of wind suddenly rose. A white light shot across the glacial ground, causing the uncle and nephew to exclaim, "Uncle, the extreme ice fox!" The youth shouted loudly. His small face was already red, and he was also reminding the middle-aged man. Even without the youth's reminder, the middle-aged man had already found the trace of the extreme ice fox. He stepped on the ice, and the aura around him whistled. He flew with the wind and suddenly shot toward the extreme ice fox. A sawtooth iron net appeared in his hand. 3 steps turned into 2 steps. The middle-aged man looked solemn, and suddenly threw the sawtooth iron net at the extreme ice fox. This ominous beast was indeed a fox. Its innate spiritual intelligence was not low, and it was about to transform into a human form. When it realized that it was in danger, Its cunning eyes flashed. It suddenly stopped and shot to the other side. I knew you were a cunning beast. Where do you think you are going? The middle-aged man's voice was excited. The sawtooth iron net changed direction and strangely appeared on the head of the extreme ice fox. Obviously, the middle-aged man had already known the characteristics of this ominous beast before he came here. Naturally, he was prepared to capture this ominous beast in his hands. Seeing that the extreme ice fox was about to be captured by the uncle and nephew, something unexpected happened. Boom! The heaven and earth shook. The glacier shattered, and the snow that filled the sky suddenly stopped. The space and time of this area seemed to be frozen. A black figure rushed out from the ice sea, and a lifeless aura was emitted from this person's body. And it was this small mistake that caused the extreme ice fox to turn into a white light and disappear from the uncle and nephew's sight. The sawtooth iron net also missed and fell on the thick ice. The extreme ice fox is gone? Looking at the scene before him, the youth was completely dumbfounded. His eyes began to turn red. Who am I? The figure stared at the endless glaciers as a dazed look flashed across his eyes. His brows were slightly furrowed, as if he was recalling something. You bastard, give me back my extreme ice fox. Looking at the culprit in the void, the youth roared at him. If one listened carefully, the youth's voice was choked with sobs, as if he was about to cry at any time. The youth's voice pulled the man's thoughts back to reality. He slowly lowered his head to look at the uncle and nephew, and then looked at the white fox that was fleeing in panic on the ground in the distance. He faintly understood something. Yinner, don't be rude. The middle-aged man's face changed greatly. He quickly stepped forward and hurriedly blocked the youth behind him. Then he bowed to the mysterious man and said, Senior, please forgive my nephew. He is just a young man. If he has been disrespectful to you, please forgive him. The middle-aged man was a practitioner, but only a small one. According to the division of the cultivation realm, he was only at the gold core stage. In the entire chaotic world, he was even inferior to an ant. As for the black-clothed man standing in the void, he couldn't see through his cultivation at all. Although the other party didn't reveal any aura, his body and mind were trembling. It was as if the other party could turn him and his nephew into ashes with a single glance. At this moment, the middle-aged man was afraid that the mysterious black-robed man would kill them in a rage. After all, killing people in the Bachan Star Field was as easy as eating and drinking. Chapter 1373. Uncle, the extreme ice fox is my mother's life-saving medicine. If this bastard hadn't shown up, the beast wouldn't have escaped. The young man's eyes were red and misty. He roared, clearly unwilling to accept this outcome. Pa, shut your mouth. The middle-aged man's expression changed. He turned around and slapped the young man's cheek, causing the young man to freeze in place. He didn't know why his uncle had slapped him. Bastard, it's just a little ice fox. How dare you be so rude to a senior? If you continue to be so presumptuous, you'll be punished according to the clan's rules when we return. The middle-aged man's words were cold. He kept shooting glances at the young man, his eyes filled with worry. The young man was already furious, but when he saw the look in his uncle's eyes, he was shocked. He sadly shut his mouth and didn't say another word. Although the young man was immature, he knew how cruel the North Star domain was. Experts were as common as the heavens, and people were as common as flies. How could he not understand his uncle's meaning? The man standing in the air was obviously a terrifying expert. If he really wanted to kill the two of them, they would definitely die. Senior, this nephew of mine. When the young man didn't speak, the middle-aged man relaxed. He hurriedly bowed to the black-robed man, wanting to say some words of apology. Before the middle-aged man could finish, the black-robed man's eyes focused on the young man. Then, he stepped into the air and walked toward the young man. The black-robed man's actions startled the middle-aged man. A fierce look flashed in his eyes. He quickly stepped in front of the young man and said, "My lord, you are a supreme expert. Why do you need to get angry with mortal cultivators like us? My nephew was disrespectful to you, and I'm willing to pay with my life." I only ask that you let this poor child go. Uncle. The young man knew he had caused a great disaster. He had offended this mysterious expert with his disrespectful words. And now he was implicating his uncle to die here. This caused him to cry out in grief. The actions of the uncle and nephew caused the black-robed man to frown. Although he couldn't remember who he was, that didn't mean his intelligence had regressed. He could see that the uncle and nephew were extremely afraid of him. Rumble. Although he couldn't remember who he was, the usage of his own techniques had been engraved into his bones. The black-robed man stretched out his palm, and a gigantic hand, that was tens of thousands of feet long, appeared. The entire world rumbled and exploded, causing despair to appear on the faces of the uncle and nephew. Boom! The giant heavenly hand blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It terrifyingly covered this part of the sky. Amidst the flying snow, this giant heavenly hand stretched towards the ground in the distance. Following a panicked fox cry, the giant heavenly hand dissipated, and a white fox appeared in the black-clothed man's hand. Chi! The black-clothed man tossed the white fox to the youth, who caught it in a daze. Then, he grabbed the extreme ice fox tightly in his hand. This was the medicine that could save his mother. He and his uncle had not died, and the extreme ice fox had been recovered. This caused the youth to go wild with joy, but there was also confusion in his eyes. He looked at the black-clothed man with a puzzled expression. Looking at the scene before him, the middle-aged man was completely stunned. Then, with a plop, he knelt on the solid ice and kowtowed to the black-robed man. "Thank you, sir, for sparing my life." After saying this, the middle-aged man hurriedly said to the youth, "Why aren't you kowtowing and thanking Senior for his kindness?" Ah! The youth was awakened by his uncle's words. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and thanked the black-clothed man. But before the youth knelt down, a gentle force stopped his movement, and this force also made the middle-aged man stand up. The uncle and nephew looked at the black-clothed man in a daze. They were so nervous that they did not know what to say. "What year is it now?" The black-clothed man's voice was slightly stiff, because he had not spoken for thousands of years. He did not know where he was or who he was, but some fragments kept flashing through his mind, which made him frown tightly. This is the icy-cold river of the Bachan Star Field. Today is the 820,000 year of the 10th Yuanhui year. The middle-aged man hurriedly replied, "The 10th Yuanhui year? The chaotic world?" After experiencing the initial confusion, the black-clothed man's memory was gradually recovering. The pictures in his mind were connected one after another, as if he had fallen into a distant memory. I remember everything." After half an hour, the black-clothed man's eyes flickered, and an extremely terrifying aura flashed by. The world instantly stagnated, and the cold wind between heaven and earth dissipated. "I didn't expect that I would come back to life. It seems that the heavens have not forsaken me, Yi Xian. No wonder the NI character formula is called a taboo skill." The black-clothed man was Yi Xian. Thousands of years ago, he fell into the Bachan Star Field, and directly fell into the ice sea. It was not until thousands of years later that he reappeared. However, after these tens of millions of years, Yi Xian had been in a daze the entire time. He was truly on the verge of turning into ashes. Thousands of years ago, Yi Xian's flesh and blood had all melted, and he had turned into a skeleton. He had also been hit by the aftermath of the Deathless God Lord's attack. What's more, the attack formula had backfired on him. Logically speaking, he should have died. However, when Yi Xian fell into the ice sea in front of him, he relied on his unwavering willpower to prevent his soul from dispersing. At the last moment of his life, he finally used the last trump card he had prepared. And this trump card was the NI character formula of the 8 taboo skills. At the beginning, the Eternal Shadow passed on 2 taboo skills to him. One was the attack formula, and the other was the NI character formula. The function of the attack formula did not need to be introduced. There was only one function of the NI character formula: destruction and establishment, seeking life and death. These simple words explain the function of the NI character formula, and it was also the reason why Yi Xian could be reborn after thousands of years. The NI character formula was a great regeneration skill, and it was also one of the top 3 taboo skills. Even the Eternal Shadow passed it on to Yi Xian was extremely distressed. One had to know that the Eternal Shadow had survived because of the NI character formula. How could a taboo character value a taboo skill so highly be ordinary? However, although the NI character formula could allow one to seek life in death, it also had a 90% chance of survival. Fortunately, Yi Xian's willpower was extremely strong. Although he was on the verge of death, he still stabilized his last bit of consciousness and kept using the NI character formula. Finally, after thousands of years, he came back from the dead. Moreover, not only did he come back from the dead, Yi Xian's cultivation had crossed the half-step Dao querying realm, and he had become a Dao querying realm existence. Also because of the NI character formula, he had directly avoided the Dao querying realm tribulation. After all, there was no tribulation more terrifying than the battle back then. It was a miracle that Yi Xian had survived. Now that he had stepped into the Dao querying realm, he had been reborn. However, after thousands of years of slumber, Yi Xian felt that it had been a long time. Even when he had just broken out of seclusion under the ice sea, his mind was still in a mess. It was only after this uncle and nephew pair reminded him that he finally remembered who he was. You supreme experts didn't expect this, did you? I'm still alive in this world. Yi Xian smiled coldly. A brutal killing intent flashed across his eyes. He was a vengeful person. Although he had killed the Lord of the Extreme Devil back then, he had never forgotten that the Undying Heaven Lord and the Lord of Chaos wanted to take his life. Chapter 1374. Senior, if there's nothing else, we'll take our leave now. Yi Xian's appearance made the uncle and nephew extremely nervous. Although the middle-aged man couldn't see Yi Xian's cultivation base, he knew that Yi Xian was definitely a powerful expert. He wasn't someone he could look up to. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes when he saw the middle-aged man's respectful expression. He could feel the man's reverence for him. This was the cruel world. The weak were as insignificant as ants, while the strong were as heavy as mountains. In the face of absolute strength, one could only stay alive by being cautious. Where's the nearest city? Yi Xian might be bloodthirsty, but he wasn't a killing machine. Moreover, this uncle and nephew hadn't offended him, so he didn't want to waste time talking to 2 ants. Since the uncle and nephew wanted to leave as soon as possible, Yi Xian didn't intend to force them to stay. He asked about the location of this place. He wanted to go to the North Star Domain's gathering place and find out the result of the battle millions of years ago. After all, when he fled back then, the outcome of that battle between the strongest was something he was concerned about. However, Yi Xian didn't intend to return to the Grand Central Domain, since millions of years had passed, and he had just stepped into the Dao querying realm. He might as well continue hiding until he reached the Immortal realm. Then he could return to the Grand Central Domain. Faced with Yi Xian's questions, the middle-aged man answered without hiding anything. He pointed to the nearest city for Yi Xian and was about to leave. While Yi Xian and the middle-aged man were talking, the young man stole glances at Yi Xian from time to time. His eyes were filled with anticipation, as if he wanted to say something. Perhaps sensing the young man's thoughts, the middle-aged man gave him a cryptic look. Then he slowly shook his head. Clearly, this person's identity was strange, and it was best not to get involved. Senior, this is a rough map of the North Star Domain. The locations of the major orthodoxies and cities are marked on it. If there's nothing else, we'll take our leave first. The middle-aged man bowed and bid farewell to Yi Xian. Yi Xian merely glanced at the map and casually tossed it back to the middle-aged man. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared before the eyes of the uncle and nephew. Seeing Yi Xian leave, a look of disappointment flashed in the youth's eyes. He then said to the middle-aged man, "Uncle, this person is clearly an extremely powerful expert who can heal Mother. Why don't we?" Without waiting for the young man to finish, the middle-aged man waved his hand and interrupted him. With a serious expression he said, "This person's origin is unknown. His cultivation is indeed terrifying to the point that it makes me tremble. However, I can feel that this person is extremely murderous from his body. Although he has restrained his aura, didn't you notice that the way he looked at us was as if he was looking at two ants? This kind of expert treats human lives like grass. It's better not to get too involved with him. Moreover, we have already obtained the extreme nice fox. The elder in the clan is also a minor saint. As long as we beg him, he will definitely be able to help your mother. But the elder and the others, hearing his uncle's words, a look of hatred flashed in the youth's eyes. It was obvious that he hated the so-called elder in the clan. Say no more. No matter how much they despise you, you are still the descendant of the Shao clan. Moreover, sister-in-law is also the wife of Big Brother. They will not leave you in the lurch. The middle-aged man could completely feel the hatred in the youth's heart. He comforted him, hoping to resolve the resentment in the youth's heart. All of a sudden, the glacier that stretched for thousands of miles shook. Snow fluttered violently in the sky. Icebergs exploded one after another, and the sound of explosions could be heard continuously. It was as if the heavens and earth were falling apart. Could it be that the rumor is true, that there is a giant ice sea beast under the glacier? This strange phenomenon caused the middle-aged man to exclaim in fear. Without waiting for the youth's response, he grabbed the youth and fled into the distance. Boom! The ice surface that stretched for thousands of miles was completely shattered. The earth-shaking sound could be heard. A body that was tens of thousands of feet tall emerged from the ice sea. The huge body was so huge that one could not see the end of it. It was impossible to see the difference between the head and the tail of the beast. Giant ice sea beast. Run! Looking at the scene in front of him, the middle-aged man's eyes were filled with despair. The giant ice sea beast was a terrifying beast that lived in the depths of the ice sea. It was said that it lurked under the ice sea. Its cultivation base was comparable to a minor saint. How could a puny cultivator like him fight against it? The beast swung its tail, creating a monstrous ice sea. Ice rain fell from the sky, trapping the uncle and the nephew in one area. Roar! The giant ice sea beast roared madly. It sensed that the two humans were its food. Although it was not enough to fill the gap between its teeth, it was still a kind of food. It had been suppressing itself for thousands of years. That terrifying human had finally left. For the past thousands of years, it could only hide in its cave at the bottom of the sea. Now that it saw its food that it had not seen for a long time, how could it let the uncle and nephew leave? Yinner, I will stop it. Take the ice fox and run. Facing such a crisis, the middle-aged man was filled with despair. He could only hope that he could attract the attention of the giant ice sea beast and let the youth escape. Clang! The cold saber was unsheathed. 100 feet long saber chi whizzed out. The middle-aged man roared and rushed towards the giant ice sea beast, hoping to open a path for the youth. Uncle, looking at his uncle's suicidal actions, the youth's eyes turned red as he cried out in grief. Don't worry about me. Take the ice fox and run. Sensing that the youth was still not willing to leave, the middle-aged man roared. The steel saber in his hand brought up 1,000 feet long saber chi, continuously hacking towards the giant ice sea beast. Like a moth flying into a flame, it was like an egg hitting a rock. Roar! The sound shook the heaven and earth. The ice sea was shaking. The middle-aged man's actions had completely triggered the giant ice sea beast's ferocious nature. A mere ant dared to use weapons against it. This puny human was simply courting death. The ice river poured down from the sky, and the beast's head emerged from the ice river. Its 10,000 feet long mouth emitted a bloodthirsty aura. A terrifying suction force bloomed from the mouth, dragging the middle-aged man towards the beast's mouth like a rootless duckweed. Uncle, looking at the scene in front of him, the youth cried out. A sharp sword appeared in his hand. He stepped on the ice, wanting to save his uncle. If I die, then so be it. I can't let my big brother die. Run! Sensing the youth's actions, the middle-aged man roared. He could die here, but he did not want to see his nephew die here. How could he face his big brother in the underworld? No! Looking at the giant ice sea beast that was about to swallow the middle-aged man, the youth cried out. His eyes were filled with despair. There was no way he could fight against this terrifying beast. This is really troublesome. Suddenly, an indifferent voice rang out. This voice was like thunder, but also like the cold wind of the underworld, causing the giant ice sea beast to be stunned. The terrifying suction force suddenly disappeared. The middle-aged man fell from the sky. The youth hurriedly caught his uncle. His eyes shone with a sense of relief. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.